Chapter 587. The situation before them was very strange. Jun Xiaoyaro had condensed Jiang Shengyi's great path divine qi. Jiang Shengyi, on the other hand, had condensed Jun Xiaoyao's divine aura. Of the two divine qi, one was condensed from the innate embryo of Taoism, and the other was condensed from the sacred body of the ancients and the Physique book. This dual cultivation allowed Jun Xiaoyaro and Jiang Shengyi to each condense a divine qi that belonged to the other. It could be said that such a scene had never happened before. Interesting. Is this the resonance between the sacred body of the ancients and the innate embryo of Taoism? Jun Xiaoyaro felt that this change was very interesting. Jiang Shengyi also felt that it was very strange. He didn't expect the two constitutions to have such a connection. Perhaps Xiaoyaro and I are destined to be together. When Jiang Shengyi thought of this, he felt a sweet feeling that was both shy and happy. After that, the two of them didn't condense any more divine qi. After all, Jun Xiaoyaro and Jiang Shengyi had each condensed 3 divine qi in a short period of time. In total, they had 6 divine qi, which was an extremely shocking amount. However, the divine fetus still had a huge amount of energy left. Jun Xiaoyaro and Jiang Shengyi each absorbed half of this energy. The energy would sink into their bodies and play an important role in the next condensing of divine qi. If they wanted to break through to the next level, the energy of the divine fetus would also play an amazing role. Jun Xiaoyaro and Jiang Shengyi were each comprehending and consolidating their gains in cultivation. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. The atmosphere of the entire barren heaven battlefield became slightly restless. Many geniuses were very confused as to why Jun Xiaoyaro hadn't shown up for the appointment. Yi Guchen was able to keep his composure, and he didn't urge them in the slightest. He just sat cross-legged on the heavenly Dao arena by himself as he waited for the final battle of destiny. After more than half a month of consolidation, the energy cocoon that enveloped Jun Xiaoyaro and Jiang Shengyi finally cracked open. 2 figures with perfect figures were revealed. The harvest this time is too great. Jun Xiaoyaro exhaled deeply, a trace of excitement on his face. Including the immortal qi that he had just cultivated, he now had 8 wisps of immortal qi. What kind of concept was that? It could be said that even on the ultimate ancient road, 8 strands of immortal qi was a taboo that no one dared to provoke. Even among the outlawed sky prides. To be able to cultivate 8 strands of immortal qi was also one of a kind. What was even more terrifying was that this was not Jun Xiaoyao's limit. He could cultivate even more immortal qi. As for the realm, however, he didn't make a breakthrough. It was fine if Jun Xiaoyaro didn't break through, but once he did, it would definitely be a blowout. Was that why he didn't use the power of the divine fetus to break through this time, and instead accumulated it in his body? He would leave it for another day to break through the realm in one go. On the other hand, Jiang Shengyi's beautiful face was also filled with joy. She had also cultivated 6 strands of immortal qi, even if she wasn't as good as Jun Xiaoyaro. But it was enough for her to stand out from the crowd. What made Jiang Shengyi even happier was that Jun Xiaoyao's aura had become stronger again. This made her happier than her own breakthrough. Xiaoyao, how do you feel? Jiang Shengyi walked gracefully toward Jun Xiaoyaro. Not bad. If only I knew it would be so efficient. I should have dual cultivated with Sister Shengyi earlier, Jun Xiaoyaro said honestly. Jiang Shengyi's snow-white face turned red when she heard this. That was too direct. Jun Xiaoyaro sized up Jiang Shengyi and said, Sister Shengyi, are you testing my determination? Sensing Jun Xiaoyao's gaze, Jiang Shengyi finally realized that she was still completely naked. Her snow-white skin was like jade, glowing. She blushed and hurriedly took out a snow-white robe to change. To be honest, even Jun Xiaoyaro didn't expect this. Jiang Shengyi, who was as slender as a willow in her snow-white robe, was actually so well endowed inside. Sister Shengyi really hides her abilities well. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly, and unhurriedly changed into his white robe. Jiang Shengyi's face was slightly red, and she charmingly rolled her eyes at Jun Xiaoyaro. How could she not know that Jun Xiaoyaro was teasing her figure? This could be considered as sexual harassment, alright? However, Jiang Xingyi didn't feel the slightest bit repulsed. Instead, she blushed and her heart raced because of Zhang Xiaoyao's gaze. Jiang Xingyi's cheeks were still red. She pretended to be indifferent, but her gaze quietly fell on Zhang Xiaoyao, who was putting on his robe. "It's still too big," Jiang Xingyi muttered to herself as she blushed and her heart raced. After some tidying up, the awkward atmosphere finally disappeared. Zhang Xiaoyao then said seriously, "Sister Xingyi, you have my physical immortal qi, and I have your immortal qi of the Great Path. Do you feel the mystery?" Jiang Xingyi's expression also returned to normal. She said, "I feel it. If I activate my physical immortal qi, I vaguely feel like I have an innate sacred body." "Yes, I feel the same." Zhang Xiaoyao nodded. To put it simply, if Zhang Xiaoyao added the immortal qi of the Great Path to his sacred body of the ancients, he could simulate the innate sacred body of Tao for a short period of time and manifest part of the power of the innate sacred body of Tao. On the other hand, it was the same for Jiang Xingyi. Don't underestimate this little change. The innate sacred body of Tao was definitely one of the most monstrous physiques in the world. Even if it could only simulate a small part of the power for a short period of time, it was enough to be used as a trump card to catch the enemy off guard. Zhang Xiaoyao was very satisfied with this harvest. Of course, he wouldn't forget that it was Jiang Xingyi who risked her life to bring it to him. "Sister Xingyi, thank you very much," Zhang Xiaoyao said sincerely. He stepped forward and put his arm around Jiang Xingyi's shoulder. Jiang Xingyi's heart was so sweet that it almost melted. "Xiaoyao." Jiang Xingyi suddenly called out. Zhang Xiaoyao had just responded. A picturesque face was reflected in front of him. Her eyebrows were curved, her eyes were like autumn water, her lips were bright red, and her teeth were sparkling. She kissed Zhang Xiaoyao lightly on the lips. It was a quick touch. The mature and gentle Jiang Xingyi was like a little girl who had fallen in love for the first time. Her heart was palpitating and beating non-stop. Zhang Xiaoyao didn't feel anything. He was an old hand in his previous life. "Let's go," Zhang Xiaoyao said. The King of Kings Battle of Emperor Road was still waiting for him. Zhang Xiaoyao couldn't be trapped in this gentle village. Outside the cave, many people were waiting. Zhang Xiaoyao and Jiang Xingyi walked out at the same time. They looked at Jiang Xingyi, whose snow-white face was as bright as the sunset, and whose starry eyes were moist with shyness. Everyone present was stunned. Then, they smiled bitterly and shook their heads. The main purpose of dual cultivation was not to cultivate. Those who understood it would understand it. Those who didn't would understand it when they grew up. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Zhang Xiaoyao asked. "Haha, congratulations. It seems that the world will soon have an innate saint body of Taoist embryo that will shock the world," Lord Grimm said. "It seems that I will have a little master soon." The nine-headed lion was also cheering. Zhang Xiaoyao was speechless. For the first time, he realized that the people around him were so gossipy. Jiang Luoli was even teary-eyed. She pouted and looked like she had been wronged. In the end, Zhang Xiaoyao had to explain to clear up the misunderstanding. "All right, Yi Guchen must have been waiting for a long time. The Emperor Road of the Huangtian mystic realm should come to an end," Zhang Xiaoyao said seriously. Yi Guchen was definitely a very strong opponent. "Xiaoyao, you must be careful. Don't be careless," Jiang Xingyi said as she stepped forward and tidied Zhang Xiaoyao's clothes. "Don't worry. He is an interesting opponent, but the only person who can defeat me is myself." Chapter 588. In the deepest part of the barren heaven battlefield, there was a heavenly law arena. Rumor had it that it was a battleground for ancient geniuses to fight for the seal of proving doctrine. Although the heavenly law arena was called an arena, it looked like a giant island floating in the void. All kinds of sealing runes were imprinted in the void, preventing the shockwaves of the battle from spreading. At this moment, the surroundings of the heavenly law arena were crowded with many Emperor Road geniuses who were looking forward to it. They were all waiting for the final battle of the Emperor Road. On one side was the first on the barren heaven saint leaderboard, the reincarnation of the Yi family's sword demon, who had never been defeated since he entered the Emperor Road. On the other side was the son of God of the Jun family, who was known as the Invincible Sage. His strength was unprecedented, and he was known as an outlawed Sky Pride. His terrifying battle record of killing thousands of Sky Prides with a single move in the barren heaven battlefield was still passed down in the Emperor Road, becoming a legend. It could be said that the battle between these two represented the pinnacle of the younger generation in the barren heaven mystic realm. If one could watch a battle of this level, it would be a great opportunity to gain enlightenment. Therefore, none of the prodigies would miss out on this battle. Even Supreme Du Tuor had come here long ago and was prepared. At this moment, in the Heavenly Law arena, 5 dazzling jade seals that exuded the Heavenly Law's aura rotated in the air. They were the 5 seals of proving doctrine. On the other side, Yi Guchen was sitting cross-legged in the void, with a blood-stained Emperor Slayer on his knees. He was waiting for his fated battle. We must win this battle. Among the crowd, a young man with a sword on his back clenched his fists. He was the Yi family's ancient freak, Yi Nantian. However, even as an ancient freak, Yi Nantian's status was much lower than Yi Guchen's. The Yi family's luck was all on Yi Guchen's shoulders. To a certain extent, this was a battle of luck between the Yi family and the Jun family. At some point, Yi Guchen seemed to have sensed something. He slowly stood up. The Emperor Slayer made a sonorous sound and floated beside him, like a loyal comrade. "Is it finally here?" Yi Guchen muttered. A strand of sword intent that shot into the sky surged out from within his body. The stars trembled. Heaven and earth shook. He also unleashed his cultivation at the Sage Realm great perfection without holding back. This was the first time Yi Guchen had fully revealed his cultivation in front of everyone. He is indeed at the great circle of the Sage stage. The eyes of some Sky Prides flickered. Generally speaking, some reincarnated ancient powerhouses had a great advantage in terms of cultivation realm. For example, some quasi-emperors or even great emperors reincarnated very early on. Then, he would be able to cultivate to an extremely high level. Although Yi Guchen had severed his past and reconstructed his true self, what about his potential and talent? He was still alive. It wasn't surprising that he had cultivated to the Saint Realm's perfection. As for Jun Xiaoyao, how could he cultivate to the Saint stage perfection at such a young age? This was the one and only anomaly throughout the ages. Just as Yi Guchen released his fighting spirit, there was a vast divine light surging in the distant sky. A white-robed figure arrived like a divine king. Every step, it caused the stars in the sky to tremble. A terrifying magical power ripple that wasn't weaker than Yi Guchen's. When it spread out, the surrounding Sky Prides felt as if they were facing a god. Jun Xiaoyao had arrived. Looking at the soaring fighting spirit, Yi Guchen's shocking sword intent, Jun Xiaoyao's bright divine eyes. There was also a hint of surprise. Yi Guchen was stronger than he thought. He was stronger. But this. Only then would it be interesting. If it was the same as before, Jun Xiaoyao wouldn't be interested in going to this appointment. He hoped that someone could challenge him. Behind Jun Xiaoyao, Jiang Shengyi, Jiang Luoli, Xiao Moxian, Nine-Headed Lion, Lord Grim, Jun Lingcang, and the others also followed. A large group of people followed behind him in a grandiose manner. The entire Heavenly Dao arena was filled with people, and the atmosphere reached its peak. "You're finally here." Yi Guchen spoke, his voice calm and indifferent. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's arrival, his cold face didn't have the slightest ripple. Even if Jun Xiaoyao had already made history, and the battle record of killing thousands of people with one move had shaken the entire Huangtian mystic realm. But Yi Guchen's eyes didn't have the slightest fear. There was only the excitement of meeting an opponent and the surging fighting spirit. "I have to thank you for not participating in the encirclement before," Jun Xiaoyao said. If Yi Guchen had joined the encirclement of Jiang Shengyi, then Jiang Shengyi definitely wouldn't have been able to hold on until his arrival. Hearing this, Yi Guchen shook his head indifferently and said, "There's no need to thank me. I wouldn't do such a despicable thing." Who was he? He was the sword demon who had once killed an emperor under the starry sky. Such a person, even if reincarnated, would not be in cahoots with the likes of Long Shuhuang. That would be an insult to his character. Heh, I was wrong. If that's the case, then I'll apologize with a battle. Zhang Xiaoyao's fighting spirit was also surging. He rarely had such a hot-blooded moment. Yi Guchen laughed heroically. His black hair danced in the wind as he shouted, Zhang Xiaoyao, I've climbed to the peak of the sword Dao and asked all the heroes in the world. Are you worthy of my sword? No matter how the wind and clouds change, heroes rise and fall, the monarch is the king, and the world is his subject. Zhang Xiaoyao's words were equally heroic, and his aura swallowed thousands of miles like a tiger. Looking at the two peerless geniuses whose auras soared into the sky and had the world in their hearts, the blood of all the geniuses present boiled. Jiang Shengyi, Jiang Luoli, and the other girls' eyes were filled with longing and admiration. This was the person they admired, a man who dominated thousands of generations and swallowed mountains and rivers. Even Supreme Du Tuo's blood, which had been silent for a long time, was boiling. It's good to be young and frivolous. Supreme Du Tuo smiled slightly. Next, the shocking battle between the Yi family's sword demon and the Zhun family's son of God officially began. Zhang Xiaoyao took a step forward and threw a punch in a simple manner. At this point, any words would seem pale and powerless. Only a hearty battle would be the greatest form of respect for each other. Zhang Xiaoyao attacked. The vast fist light covered the sun, the moon, and the stars, as if the sky was overturning. Yi Guchen didn't use the Emperor Slayer sword. Instead, he also threw a punch with his palm. Is Yi Guchen crazy? He's actually fighting Zhang Xiaoyao head-on? Many geniuses widened their eyes. Zhang Xiaoyao's physical body was famous for being abnormal. Who among the younger generation could stop him? Boom! Their fists and palms collided. It was as if two galaxies had collided, bursting out huge waves. Yi Guchen only felt a terrifying and boundless divine power pouring over. His physical body emitted light. Golden Dao patterns intertwined, and a vast aura of creation filled the air. Could that be the legendary golden body of creation that was almost lost? Seeing the changes in Yi Guchen's physical body, some of the knowledgeable geniuses present couldn't help but exclaim. The golden body of creation was an extremely rare and supreme body-tempering technique. It was rumored that some Buddhist powerhouses used the golden body of creation to cultivate an immortal body. However, such a monstrous technique was almost lost. Even in one of the Buddhist legacies, the Little Western Paradise, there was only a partial and incomplete inheritance. Now, Yi Guchen used the complete golden body of creation. This was shocking. As expected of a reincarnated powerhouse. He has awakened his innate wisdom and can remember many lost techniques. Some of the geniuses sighed. These reincarnated monstrous geniuses also had an advantage over the rest. They could awaken the memories of their previous lives. After that, they would recall all kinds of martial arts techniques. Many of them were ancient techniques that had been lost. They were extremely precious. Oh, the golden body of creation? Seeing that Yi Guchen blocked his punch, Zhang Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows slightly. However, this was just a casual punch. Boom! Zhang Xiaoyao activated the 100,000 divine elephant granules in his body. An even more terrifying power poured out. Crack! The sound of bones cracking could be heard from Yi Guchen's arm. With a loud bang, there was an earth-shattering sound of metal clashing. Yi Guchen's golden body of creation was instantly broken. Chapter 589. Dazzling golden light flickered in the air. The golden runes on Yi Guchen's body began to shatter. Zhang Xiaoyao's physical strength was too terrifying. He was much more powerful than some of the older generation of saint kings, or even supreme saints. Even though Yi Guchen had cultivated the almost lost golden body of creation, he was still no match for Zhang Xiaoyao in terms of physical strength. Crack! The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Yi Guchen's expression was very calm. His arm was trembling at an extremely high frequency. Every time he trembled, he was able to dissipate a large amount of force. A technique to dissipate force? Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. This was not some kind of magic. It was just a combat technique. However, it was also evident that Yi Guchen, as the reincarnation of the sword demon, had rich combat experience. Many of his techniques had become instinctive. Even so, Yi Guchen was forced to retreat dozens of steps. Yi Guchen, who was ranked first on the Baron Sky Saint ranking, was forced to retreat for the first time. There was dead silence all around. The son of God of the Jun family is indeed undefeatable. The legend of invincibility. The legend of the Jun family's son of God will continue. Some of Jun Xiaoyao's fanatical admirers were shouting excitedly. Jun Xiaoyao was still the same Jun Xiaoyao. When fighting, he would never be injured or retreat. He would fight until the end. Of course, not everyone thought this way. The two sides are just testing each other. The outcome is still unknown. That's right. The sword demon of the Yi family is testing the son of God of the Jun family with his own shortcomings. It's normal for him to be defeated. Don't forget that Yi Guchen hasn't used his sword yet. These words brought some of the geniuses back to their senses. Yi Guchen was the sword demon. With a sword in hand, he controlled the world. Right now, Yi Guchen was at most probing. Yi Guchen, there's no need for unnecessary probing. Show me your true strength, Jun Xiaoyao said calmly. Seeing this, Yi Guchen did not hold back. His footsteps flashed, and his figure seemed to draw out thousands of light shadows, merging into the trichiliocosm. He could be found in every world. This was an extremely ancient movement divine ability, and it had the ability to confuse the enemy, making it impossible for the enemy to discern what was real and what was not. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent as he dealt with the myriad of changes by remaining unchanged. Yi Guchen used his finger as a sword, and thousands of light shadows pointed out at the same time. Tian Luo sword finger. It was as if thousands of sword auras had cut through the 3,000 worlds and surrounded Jun Xiaoyao. These sword lights were both real and illusory. Jun Xiaoyao glanced around indifferently, but he still didn't move. He stood with his hands behind his back, looking very calm. In the next moment, those sword auras melted into nothingness when they were within 100 feet of Jun Xiaoyao's body. It's that strange magical immunity ability. Seeing this scene, some elites exclaimed. Yi Guchen's expression was calm, and his thousands of clones all rushed towards Jun Xiaoyao. In Jun Xiaoyao's mind, his primordial spirit trembled slightly, and the surging power of his primordial spirit poured out. In an instant, he locked onto a figure. Jun Xiaoyao's footsteps flashed, and a divine chain of order flew out from between his eyebrows, condensing into a golden short sword, and slashed at the figure. It was the primitive Emperor Dao sword. Boom! The moment the primitive Emperor Dao sword slashed down, all the surrounding phantoms suddenly disappeared. Jun Xiaoyao saw through Yi Guchen's true body at a glance. Bang! A violent sound of vibration was heard. That move of Jun Xiaoyao's was supposed to be able to kill ordinary geniuses right there and then. However, to everyone's surprise, Yi Guchen actually withstood it. There was a bell-shaped weapon between his eyebrows, protecting his primordial spirit. Heavens, that's a primordial spirit weapon. Seeing that bell-shaped weapon, not to mention the elites, even Supreme Du Tuor was speechless. As the name suggested, a primordial spirit weapon was a weapon used by the primordial spirit. The forging process of a primordial spirit weapon had almost been lost. It could be said that one used one was one less. However, there was actually a primordial spirit weapon in Yi Guchen's mind that was protecting his primordial spirit. In this way, it would be extremely difficult to destroy Yi Guchen's primordial spirit. As expected of the reincarnation of an ancient powerhouse. He even has such a good thing. Many elites revealed envious gazes. At this moment, Yi Guchen's expression became serious. Jun Xiaoyao was like a towering mountain in front of him, not moving at all. Jun Xiaoyao, you're very strong. It can even be said that you're an anomaly among the elites since ancient times. However, this is what makes it interesting. After saying that, Yi Guchen raised his left hand. Blood qi surged into the sky, and killing intent filled the air. The blood-colored sword qi shook the sky. He raised his right hand, and the power of the stars surged. Above the 9 heavens, a river of stars gathered and turned into a dazzling sword of stars. Yi Guchen was actually performing sword techniques with both hands at the same time. This kind of ability was not something that just anyone could possess. Blood-killing firmament, star-slaying god. The two sword techniques were performed at the same time, and a vast sword chi swept across the sky. The giant blood-colored sword and the giant starry sword slashed at Jun Xiaoyaro at the same time. Every sword chi could easily kill a few saint overlords. Facing the two incoming swords, Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand. He still chose to fight with his physical body. Bang! It was as if a chain of mountains had collapsed. The void trembled, and debris flew through the air. The entire heavenly Dao arena was rumbling and trembling. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows slightly. Not only did the two swords fail to hurt Jun Xiaoyaro, they couldn't even make him retreat. Again, Yi Guchen's Dao heart was firm. He wouldn't be shaken by Jun Xiaoyao's strength at all. He continued to attack. His sword turned into thousands of swords, and it seemed as if there were thousands of sword lights flashing in the void. The layers of sword lights were like a meat grinder, crushing toward Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro simply punched out with the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, breaking all attacks with one move. Boom! It was as if there were 6 small worlds. As Jun Xiaoyao's fist crushed out, the surrounding thousands of sword chi were destroyed. Jun Xiaoyao's fist didn't slow down, and it smashed toward Yi Guchen. Seeing this, Yi Guchen pointed at his glabella. In an instant, the void trembled, and 108,000 sword souls burst out from his body. Each sword soul had the power to destroy the sun, moon, and stars. And now, 108,000 sword souls came out at the same time. Their power was earth-shattering. The sword chi drowned out heaven and earth and covered the sky, pressing toward Jun Xiaoyaro. Rumble. Jun Xiaoyao's 6 paths of reincarnation fist collided with the 108,000 sword souls. Instantly, there was a dense and continuous collision sound. Seeing this battle, everyone in the surroundings almost stopped breathing. The 108,000 sword souls could be said to be one of Yi Guchen's trump cards. In the past, when he fought with others, one sword soul was enough to kill his opponent. Now, 108,000 sword souls came out at the same time. One could imagine how powerful it was. Don't tell me the battle is over so quickly. Looking at Jun Xiaoyaro, who was completely surrounded by the sword souls, many of the Sky Prides present muttered. And at this moment, bang! A figure leaped out of the sea like a Kuan Peng and broke through the sword soul barrier. A punch came straight at Yi Guchen. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist controlled 6 top-tier superpowers. The power of that punch seemed to be able to pierce through the heavens. Boom! Jun Xiaoyao's punch was enough to destroy everything. Is the result already? Everyone looked at the center of the collision and muttered absent-mindedly. It would be disappointing if Yi Guchen, the first on the Desolate Sky Saint ranking, was defeated like this. Chapter 590. To their surprise, even Yi Guchen, who was ranked first on the Desolate Sky Sacred ranking, was in a disadvantageous position against Jun Xiaoyaro. The crowd could not help but wonder if anyone in the same generation in the 9 Heavens Immortal Realm could defeat Jun Xiaoyaro. Is the sword demon of the Yi clan done for? The geniuses murmured among themselves as they watched the dust spreading in the air. If that was the case, Yi Guchen's reputation would surely drop to the lowest point. No. No way. There's no way Yi Guchen is going to lose. Yi Guchen clenched his fists. No matter how strong Jun Xiaoyaro was, there was no way he could kill Yi Guchen so easily. While the crowd was immersed in their thoughts, Jun Xiaoyaro, who threw the punch, had a strange look in his eyes. His fist didn't land on flesh and blood. A gust of wind blew the dust away. In the next moment, everyone's gazes converged on him. A sword covered in blood stood in front of Yi Guchen, blocking Jun Xiaoyao's fist. It was the monarch-slaying sword. Oh! Jun Xiaoyaro raised his brows slightly. Even a supreme weapon would at least have cracks on it, if not shatter into pieces after receiving the punch. However, the Emperor Slayer sword was buzzing and trembling, as if it was brewing with a shocking sharpness. Sword, come. Yi Jiu Chen stepped back and raised his hand to grab at the same time. The monarch-slaying sword had finally landed in his hand. In an instant, Yi Jiu Chen's temperament changed. He was like a sharp sword that had been drawn out of its sheath, emitting a peerless glow that could tear the heavens apart. When a sword cultivator held a sword in his hand, he would own the entire world. Yi Guchen's finger gently brushed the edge of the monarch slaying sword. A clang was heard. Who can comprehend the joy of the sword? My sword is only missing one. Zhang Xiaoyao, you're worthy of my sword. Yi Guchen had finally used the monarch slaying sword. He casually swept out with his sword, and sword chi swept out like an ocean, filling the heavens and the earth. Streaks of sword energy came crashing down like a mountain range of 10,000 miles. If ordinary geniuses were to fall into it, they wouldn't even have the slightest bit of resistance. In that case, let's fight sword with sword, Zhang Xiaoyao said leisurely. He used his finger as a sword and swept out with the immortal slaying sword art. The incomparably sharp sword light shattered the void, and the scene of an immortal falling appeared. Zhang Xiaoyao was neither a sword cultivator nor a sword cultivator. But at his level, he could turn something rotten into something magical. He had all kinds of methods at his fingertips. At this moment, he saw Zhang Xiaoyao's peerless sword move. If he said he was a sword cultivator, no one would object. Boom! Zhang Xiaoyao's sword slashed through the myriad of sword chi and headed straight for Yi Guchen. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Was it Yi Guchen before? He was at a disadvantage against Zhang Xiaoyao's physical strength. But now, Zhang Xiaoyao was crushing Yi Guchen's strongest advantage in terms of sword Dao. If ordinary geniuses saw this scene, their Dao heart would definitely collapse and they would completely lose their will to fight. But Yi Guchen was getting braver and braver as he fought. There were flames burning in his pitch-black eyes. 3 Ultimate Holy Sword. Yi Guchen held the Imperial Slayer sword and slashed out 3 times in a row. 1 streak of sword chi. It was as blazing as the sun. 1 streak of sword chi was as cold as the moon. 1 streak of sword chi. It was as bright as the stars. This sword Dao mystical power. It was integrated with the power of the sun, moon, and stars. It was extremely mysterious. When they combined, there were endless changes. 3 sword moves in an instant. They combined hundreds and thousands of times and divided into countless sword moves. It could be said that it was almost impossible to crack this move. With Zhang Xiaoyao's comprehension, it wasn't difficult to crack this sword move. But he didn't need to crack it at all. He could defeat 10 with brute force. Zhang Xiaoyao directly used the purest strength to crush everything. His left hand used the Thunder Emperor's mystical power to derive the ultimate move, Thunder Emperor's finger. His right hand used the Kuan Peng's mystical power to perform the Kuan Peng Infinite Divine Fist. 2 mystical powers were performed by Zhang Xiaoyao at the same time. Heaven and earth seemed to be destroyed in an instant, torn in half by Zhang Xiaoyao. Even someone as strong as Yi Guchen. The ultimate move he used completely collapsed under Zhang Xiaoyao's brute strength. Zhang Xiaoyao stepped across the void and used the Kuan Peng's extreme speed. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Yi Guchen in an instant. The power of the divine elephant overpowering force was fully activated. The true body of the ancient divine elephant appeared and pressed down like a demonic mountain. Bang! Yi Guchen blocked the attack with the Emperor Slayer sword, but he was still forced back. The blood in his chest was boiling. The surrounding space was distorted by the terrifying divine power, as if it was about to explode. Not to mention Yi Guchen, who was in the middle of it. It could be said that no other genius would be able to survive Zhang Xiaoyao's attack. Yi Guchen was repelled at the moment, and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. But compared to Zhang Xiaoyao's other opponents, he was much, much better. Is the son of God of the Zhang family really invincible? Seeing the current situation, some of the geniuses were dazed. That was Yi Guchen, the reincarnation of the sword demon, who was famous in the Emperor Road. But he was always at a disadvantage against Zhang Xiaoyao. And everyone knew that Zhang Xiaoyao hadn't used his full strength. If he used his ultimate move that could destroy heaven and earth, Yi Guchen might not be able to survive. Yi Guchen, you're really impressive to be able to last so long against me, Zhang Xiaoyao said. Even if he hadn't used his full strength. But ordinary geniuses couldn't even take a casual palm strike from him. In comparison, Yi Guchen was much, much stronger. Again, Yi Guchen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. With a boom, a towering sword will burst out from Yi Guchen's body. The blood-red sword qi swept in all directions. That's the Shura sword will. Rumor has it that Yi Guchen has fused immortal qi into his sword will. Every sword will is immortal qi. Yi Guchen had finally used his true trump card, immortal qi. But unlike ordinary geniuses, his immortal qi had been transformed into sword will. Interesting. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes lit up slightly. This was the advantage of fighting with an expert. He could test his opponent's skills and learn from his own. It wasn't just the Shura sword will. There was also the five-colored divine light bursting out from Yi Guchen's body. That was the five-elements sword will. Lightning flashed out along with the sword light. Lightning sword will. There was also a surge of sword will that carried the image of all living things. That was the sword will of all creation. 4 streams of sword intent meant that Yi Jiyu Chen had refined 4 streams of immortal qi. The Yi family's sword demon has 4 immortal qi. Yi Guchen's performance shocked all the surrounding geniuses. One had to know that before refining the divine fetus, Jiang Xingyi only had 3 immortal qi. Even top geniuses like Long Shuhuang only had 3 immortal qi. Zhang Xiaoyao, will you be able to take this attack? 4 sword wills gushed out and merged with each other, forming a shocking sword that shot into the galaxy. Then, tens of thousands of sword qi fell like rain, destroying everything in all directions. Heaven and earth sword. This was the shocking sword that Yi Guchen had used with 4 immortal qi. Tens of thousands of swords came out together, washing the universe with blood. It could be said that this move was so powerful that it could even threaten a sage king expert. Since you have used all your strength, I will let you experience the true power of the Son of God. As Zhang Xiaoyao's voice fell, immortal qi also appeared on the surface of his body. Immortal body, immortal qi. Immortal qi of all creation. Reincarnation, immortal qi. Void, immortal qi. Sin, immortal qi. A total of 5 immortal qi wrapped around Zhang Xiaoyao's body like dragons. At this moment, there was dead silence in all directions. The galaxy was silent. Chapter 591. I'm not seeing things, am I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 strands of immortal qi? That's right, there are 5 strands of immortal qi. Wasn't there 4 before? It seems like the Son of God of the Jun family has another strand of immortal qi after refining the divine fetus. 3 strands of immortal qi on the ancient road of ultimate were considered powerful. 4 strands of immortal qi were enough to compete for the title of King of the Emperor Road. And now, Zhang Xiaoyao had revealed a total of 5 strands of immortal qi, causing everyone to tremble. All the Sky Pride's eyes were trembling. A monster, a one-of-a-kind monster. Supreme Du Tuor's eyelids twitched slightly. But for some reason, he felt that Zhang Xiaoyao seemed to be hiding something. Zhang Xiaoyao blasted out the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, and 5 strands of immortal qi wrapped around his arm. A punch to break the sky. All the sword qi was annihilated by this punch and disappeared without a trace. Fart. Yi Guchen finally couldn't help but spit out a big mouthful of blood. Among Zhang Xiaoyao's 5 strands of immortal qi, there was not only the immortal qi of physical body, but also the immortal qi of all creation. That kind of power was like the reincarnation of the mighty miracle god. His divine power was monstrous and unparalleled. Physical body divine power was not Yi Guchen's specialty. However, his swordsmanship was completely overpowered by Zhang Xiaoyao. His 4 sword intents were also suppressed by Zhang Xiaoyao's 5 strands of immortal qi. In terms of cultivation level, Yi Guchen could not gain any advantage. It could be said that Yi Guchen was suppressed by Zhang Xiaoyao in all aspects. Zhang Xiaoyao, could you be the reincarnation of an ancient celestial emperor? Yi Guchen wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand and looked straight at Zhang Xiaoyao. His question made many Sky Prides pricked up their ears. Indeed. They also had the same doubts in their hearts. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a freak like Zhang Xiaoyao to appear in the world. In front of him, even those ancient freaks were like weak fledglings. But the problem was that Zhang Xiaoyao was only in his 20s. No one would believe that such a young anomaly was not the reincarnation of the celestial emperor. Jun Xiaoyao, I'm just Jun Xiaoyao, not anyone else. Jun Xiaoyao said calmly. Even Goddess Eternal Calamity had said that he was a person without karma. How could he be the reincarnation of an ancient celestial emperor? It seems that no one knows that Master's most terrifying aspect isn't his sacred body of the ancients or his paragon bones, but rather, his fateless powers. Goddess of Eternal Calamity saw this. He murmured in his heart. He shook his head slightly. A fateless one? It couldn't be anyone's reincarnation. Unexpectedly, when Yi Guchen heard Jun Xiaoyao's answer, he smiled and said, Is that so? Me, Yi Guchen? He's just Yi Guchen, not some ancient sword demon. Maybe I used to be someone else, but now? I am Yi Guchen, the Grandmaster of the Way of the Sword, Yi Guchen. As soon as Yi Guchen's voice trailed off, an astonishing sword will began to be released, and the entire heavenly law arena began to tremble. It was as if they were about to face some kind of great horror. This is. Feeling this special fluctuation, all the geniuses present felt an extreme sense of fear. This was because when Jun Xiaoyao used the move of Armageddon before, there was also this kind of terrifying fluctuation sweeping out. No way, is he going to do it again? Does Yi Guchen have a trump card like the son of God of the Jun family? Some geniuses began to instinctively retreat far away, fearing that they would be affected. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a hint of interest in his eyes. He could also feel that Yi Guchen's move was different. This move is the way of the sword that I comprehended when I severed my past and reconstructed my true self. Jun Xiaoyao, you have the right to make me use this move. Yi Guchen's eyes were burning with fighting spirit. This was a move that embodied his will of the way of the sword. It was also his trump card. What, a self-created way of the sword? Hearing this, gasps could be heard from all around. The requirements to create a way of the sword was extremely strict, and it was not something that ordinary people could do. Even if they could do it, most of the self-created moves would have limited power. But now, they could feel the sword will fluctuation emanating from Yi Guchen. This way of the sword was obviously not weak. Yi Guchen held the Emperor Slayer with both hands. The Emperor Slayer let out a buzzing sound, as if it was boiling with Yi Guchen's fighting spirit. Some of the geniuses who cultivated the way of the sword suddenly realized that their swords were involuntarily flying through the air and converging toward Yi Guchen. At the same time, countless swords in the entire Emperor Road rose into the air and gathered into a mighty torrent of sword chi. Their target was the barren heaven battlefield. Yi Guchen's will of the way of the sword had affected the entire Emperor Road. At this moment, the heavenly law arena was trembling. Everyone had a feeling that this move would determine the winner of the Emperor Road's battle. Not enough, still not enough. Sensing the power of his move, Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a look of determination. He lifted his hand and patted his chest, spraying his heart's blood onto the Emperor Slayer. The Emperor Slayer's sword chi became even more intense after being stained with blood, as if it was the ancestor of all sword. With blood as the guide, with my body as the sacrifice, all swords shall greet me, heed my command. Yi Guchen raised the Emperor Slayer high, his black hair dancing wildly as he let out a long roar. Tribulation of the 10,000 deities. Whoosh. Above the Milky Way, billions of swords came from the depths of the universe, from the Emperor Road, and from various ancient star regions. The scene covered the Milky Way and the universe. There was only one sword in the universe. One sword of the universe, tribulation of 10,000 deities. The Emperor Slayer in Yi Guchen's hand slashed down. The billions of swords gathered to form a sword that reached the heavens. It was as if it was going to cut off the universe as it swept down. Rumble. The entire heavenly law arena began to sink. The sealing runes that prevented the dharmic powers from fluctuating exploded one after another, unable to withstand this terrifying power. Tribulation of 10,000 deities. This was the ultimate way of the sword that Yi Guchen had comprehended after severing his past and reconstructing his true self. This sword made even gods and ghosts sigh. It's too terrifying. Who can block this sword? Yi Guchen's ultimate move made everyone tremble. A glimmer of light finally appeared in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. Then let's see which of our self-created superpowers is more powerful. Zhang Xiaoyaro raised his hand, and the power of sin surged. Endless red lines appeared. Each strand represented karma, as well as sinful karma. Zhang Xiaoyaro was like a god that controlled all karma and sin. He wanted to control sin and send down divine punishment. If Yi Guchen was said to be the demon of the sword at this moment. Zhang Xiaoyaro was the god of control, genesis, punishment of gods. With this move, the endless red lines of karma and sin intertwined, entangling the mighty sword. An indescribable wave spread out, as if it was going to destroy 3,000 world. The Milky Way reversed, and the ancient star collapse. The entire heavenly law arena was drowned by the waves of collision. Amidst the violent rumbling, it began to break apart. The other sky prides had already retreated far away. That kind of wave, even if it was just the aftermath, was enough to kill an ordinary sky pride. Everyone was also looking forward to the final result. 10,000 deities tribulation and genesis, which was stronger? Yi Guchen and Zhang Xiaoyao, who would win? Chapter 592. Smoke filled the air, and dust flew everywhere. The heavenly law arena, which had existed since time immemorial, was now in pieces. It was as if a continent was about to sink. This is so terrifying. Even the arena is sinking. Some of the geniuses were shocked. The heavenly law arena was covered with sealing runes. No matter how strong the battle was, it would be difficult to damage the arena. Now, the entire arena was on the verge of collapse. It could be seen that the battle between Yi Guchen and Zhang Xiaoyaro was so intense that it could easily destroy the world. This was simply not like two saints, but more like a battle between two supreme beings. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the arena. Smoke and dust scattered. Zhang Xiaoyao's figure was revealed. His robe was as white as snow, and he was spotless. His hands were behind his back. His expression was as calm as the surface of a lake, without any ripples. On the other side, Yi Guchen's figure was also revealed. He knelt on one knee on the ground, holding the Emperor Slayer. Blood kept dripping from the corner of his mouth. It was clear who had won and who had lost. After a breath of dead silence, a deafening uproar was heard. He won. The son of God of the Zhang family won. As expected, the son of God of the Zhang family is the invincible legend of the younger generation. The legend of invincibility will continue. Zhang Xiaoyaro is the strongest challenger of the Emperor Road in the Huangtian mystic realm. Exclamations came from all directions. Awe, worship, fanaticism. Zhang Xiaoyaro was forever a god. Jiang Xingyi, Jiang Luoli, Lord Grim, Zhang Lingcang, and the others were all sincerely happy. Zhang Xiaoyaro had won the title of the Emperor Road. They were even happier than they were when they won it themselves. Has he lost? Yi Nantian, the ancient freak of the Yi family, sighed deeply. Although he had vaguely had such a premonition before. But Yi Guchen still gave people the illusion that he could end Zhang Xiaoyao's invincible legend. But now, it seemed that it was just an illusion. It seems that other than the outlawed sky prides on the ancient road of the ultimate path, no one else can threaten the Zhang family's son of God. Yi Nantian sighed. At least among the younger generation of the Huangtian mystic realm, Zhang Xiaoyaro was the undisputed number one. I've lost. On the broken stage, Yi Guchen slowly stood up and coughed out another mouthful of blood. However, his expression did not show any signs of depression. He just admitted his failure in a calm tone. You should be proud of yourself for being able to withstand my attacks for so long, Zhang Xiaoyaro said. Yi Guchen shook his head slightly and said, I can feel that you haven't used your full strength. If you had used your full strength, I might not have been able to hold on for so long. Upon hearing Yi Guchen's words, the sky prides present nodded in agreement. Indeed. The most shocking thing about Zhang Xiaoyaro was undoubtedly the combination of the two moves that had killed thousands of people. In this battle, Zhang Xiaoyaro did not use this move. It was clear that Zhang Xiaoyaro was still holding back. But, was he holding back only? Some sky prides suddenly thought of Zhang Xiaoyao's sacred physique vision, bones of supremacy, and many other trump cards that he had not used. Strictly speaking, Zhang Xiaoyaro had indeed held back 100 million moves. In response, Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled faintly and did not comment. If he could defeat his opponent with 1% of his strength, why should he use 10% of his strength? Seeing Zhang Xiaoyao's attitude, Yi Guchen sighed in his heart. Then, he suddenly laughed. First, he chuckled, then he laughed out loud, and finally he looked up to the sky and laughed. What's wrong? Can't Yi Guchen take the blow? Seeing Yi Guchen like this, many people suspected that he was emotionally unstable and that his Daoist heart was about to collapse. After all, anyone who faced a monster like Zhang Xiaoyaro would have their Daoist heart broken. Ji Xian, the former little saint of the Ji family, was a living example. However, to everyone's surprise, Yi Guchen did not look dispirited after laughing. Instead, there was a hint of excitement in his eyes. How long has it been? I've finally tasted defeat. How lonely it is to stand at the top. Next, I have a new goal, and that is to surpass you, Zhang Xiaoyaro. Yi Guchen's eyes were burning with fighting spirit. It was not a big deal to admit defeat. What was important was whether he could climb back up after falling. All right, I'll be waiting. Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. Yi Jiyu Chen was a rare opponent that he had some respect for. In the sky, Supreme Du Tuor saw this scene and murmured, this defeat might not be a bad thing for Yi Guchen. It might be a kind of nirvana and rebirth. At this point, the final battle of the Emperor Road had come to an end. Zhang Xiaoyaro was, without a doubt, the greatest king. However, Yi Guchen deserved to be number one on the Desolate Sky Saint leaderboard with his self-created 10,000 deities tribulation. No one would mock Yi Guchen. Because other than Zhang Xiaoyaro, it was almost impossible for the other sky prides to withstand the 10,000 deities tribulation. Just as the outcome of the battle was decided, runes of the Great Tao suddenly spread throughout the heavenly law arena. In the void, flowers fell from the sky, golden lotuses bloomed from the ground, true dragons flew in the sky, killins stepped on the sea, and all kinds of auspicious signs appeared. Some sky prides were surprised. It seems that the heavenly law's reward is coming. Supreme Du Tuor was not surprised. There were 9 Emperor Roads, and there were 9 Emperor Road Kings. They could receive the heavenly law's reward from their respective immortal realms and receive a boost in luck. I wonder what the heavenly law's reward will be for the Jun family's son of God. Many people were looking forward to it. Zhang Xiaoyao's performance was absolutely stunning. It was unprecedented. Logically speaking, his heavenly law's reward should be the most generous since ancient times. As expected. On the heavenly law arena, the 5 seals of doctrine rose into the air and released endless brilliance. Then, a shocking scene unfolded. All the seals of doctrine in the entire barren heaven battlefield gathered toward the 5 seals of doctrine. Oh no, my seal of doctrine is gone too. Some of the little giants' expressions changed. They found that the seals of doctrine that they had obtained with great difficulty were flying away on their own. All the sky prides, including the sky prides of the Jiang family and the Jun family, gathered their seals of doctrine. In the end, a few hundred seals of Tao corroboration were gathered together. Even Supreme Du Tuor was dumbfounded. All the seals of doctrine in the barren heaven mystic realm were gathered together. Did they want to put all their hopes on Zhang Xiaoyaro alone? Ordinary sky prides who obtained a seal of doctrine were already extremely powerful. Now, hundreds of seals of doctrine gathered together. If all of them were to be used on Zhang Xiaoyaro, what kind of scene would that be? Zhang Xiaoyaro was probably going to ascend right away. Under everyone's shocked gaze, the hundreds of seals of doctrine emitted endless brilliance. In the end, they merged into a crown. The crown emitted a brilliant glow and was blinding to the eyes. It was accompanied by an aura of the heavens and earth, as if it was the strongest blessing in the world. Supreme Du Tuor's eyes popped out. He couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "That's the heavenly law crown. Whoever wears this crown will definitely become a great emperor." What? Hearing Supreme Du Tuor's words, all the sky prides were dumbfounded and their scalps went numb. Wearing the heavenly law crown would definitely make one a great emperor. That was King cheating. However, when they thought of Zhang Xiaoyao's monstrous talent, everyone suddenly felt that the heavenly law crown's reward was reasonable. under everyone's gaze. The heavenly law crown slowly descended and was about to be placed on Zhun Xiaoyao's head. Zhun Xiaoyao remained calm. He was not overjoyed because of the heavenly law crown's appearance. To him, becoming a great emperor was almost a certainty. The heavenly law crown was like drawing legs on a snake. It was unnecessary. However, just as the heavenly law crown was about to land on Zhun Xiaoyao's head, the god's origin inside Zhun Xiaoyao's body shuddered all of a sudden. It was the Tao that belonged to Zhun Xiaoyao. Following it, the heavenly law crown suddenly came to a stop. Vaguely, the voice of the great Tao appeared, followed by the vague will of the heavenly Tao. Creating your own great Tao, defying the heavens and earth, an anomaly throughout the ages, forbidding you from achieving your Tao forever. The magnificent voice of the heavenly Tao spread across the desolate heaven battlefield and the Emperor Road. It spread across the Huangtian immortal realm. In the end, every cultivator in the Nine Heavens immortal realm heard the same word. The entire Nine Heavens immortal realm was in an uproar. Chapter 593. Which immortal realm did the voice come from? The Huangtian immortal realm. It's the Huangtian immortal realm's emperor path. An anomaly who has created his own great Tao has appeared. Who is it? How could he be so talented to be able to create his own path in this era of great battles? Such a person would definitely have the potential to become an immortal in the past. Unfortunately, the anomaly was intimidated by the heavenly path, which blocked his path of cultivation. His path ahead is about to be cut off. It seems like the Huangtian immortal realm has indeed produced a ruthless person. However, it's quite sad too. A peerless genius is about to vanish into the crowd. Many old antiques and living fossils in the Nine Heavens immortal realm were awakened. After hearing the great Tao heavenly melody, their faces were filled with shock. Many ancient existences shifted their attention to the Huangtian immortal realm. The will of the Nine Heavens immortal realm had not manifested for a long time. The last time it happened was during the invasion of the foreign realm and the collapse of the Xianting. Something that could alarm the will of the Nine Heavens immortal realm was definitely something serious. However, the thing that had alarmed the Nine Heavens immortal realm was, it was not an invasion of the foreign realm, a disturbance in the forbidden area, or a turbulence in the realm sea. It was all because of one person. Therefore, in the eyes of the will of the Nine Heavens immortal realm, the threat of that person was comparable to the invasion of the foreign realm, while the entire Nine Heavens immortal realm was in an uproar. In the Huangtian immortal realm, above the Zhun family's ancestral hall, 8th ancestor Zhun Tianming, 18th ancestor, 16th ancestor, and the others all wore dark expressions. Their eyes were filled with coldness and anger. Screw the heavens, do you really think the Zhun family doesn't dare to do anything? 16th ancestor cursed. His eyes were overflowing with anger. He only had the appearance of a 10-year-old child. The energy inside his body was surging, as if it was about to explode. Even with his cultivation and state of mind, the 16th ancestor had lost his composure. It was obvious that he was truly infuriated. What's the point of saying this now? It's unnecessary. 18th ancestor shook his head slightly. Back then, the Zhun family almost succeeded even though it was split. In the end, it was this son of a bitch's will of the immortal realm. 16th ancestor could not help but swear. A long time ago, the Zhun family wanted to replace the Xianting and become the dominator of the Nine Heavens immortal realm. But in the end, the world had no idea why. Only the Zhun family knew. Other than the division of the family and the obstruction of the supreme Xianting, there was also the effect of the will of the celestial realm. Otherwise, how could they rely on a collapsed supreme Xianting? It would be difficult to curb the ambitions of the Zhun family. Forget it. Let's not talk about the past. In this era of great strife, are you afraid that our Zhun family won't have a chance? What we need to pay attention to now is Xiaoyao's Tao confirmation. Zhun Tianming said. Indeed. Even if Xiaoyao's talent is monstrous, he won't be able to do anything. But with this restriction, to him, there are some obstacles as well, the 18th ancestor said. Did he watch Zhun Xiaoyao grow up? He already had feelings for Jun Xiaoyaro as if he were his grandson. It doesn't matter. Can't you achieve your Tao in the 9 heavens immortal realm? Then go to the other side. Going to the realm, see? Jun Tianming said domineeringly, even if you go to the boundless land outside the realm, would you still be afraid that you won't be able to attain your Tao? If he was an ordinary genius, to be restricted like this, that was practically hopeless for him to attain the Tao. But for the Jun family, they had the confidence and the ability to do so. Let Jun Xiaoyaro go to a farther place to attain the Tao. Ha ha! Is that so? When Xiaoyaro attains the Tao and becomes an emperor, the will of the mystic realm won't be able to do anything to him. If Xiaoyaro can become an immortal, then he can overturn the world and re-establish the order of the world. The 16th ancestor laughed. I think that with Xiaoyao's stubborn personality, he will definitely not be willing to run away. Instead, he will choose to continue attaining the Tao in the mystic realm. That will depend on his own choice. Let him be, Jun Tianming said. I believe that Xiaoyaro will succeed. When he attains the Tao and becomes an immortal, he will go against the damned heavens. The 16th ancestor laughed. Rumble. At that moment, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky above the Jun family. It was as if their conversation had violated some kind of taboo. Heh. Just you wait. Jun Tianming and the others just sneered at the sky without saying anything. The Jun family had been lying low for a long time just to wait for an opportunity. And Jun Xiaoyaro was the key. At the Heavenly Law Arena in the Barren Heaven battlefield, all the geniuses were stunned. They didn't expect the situation to take such a 360-degree turn. Just a moment ago, the Heavenly Law crown was crowned. If he wore it, he would be destined to become a great emperor. But in the next moment, he fell from heaven to hell. Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't attain the Tao. Did you guys hear that? The Heavenly Law voice said that the Son of God of the Jun family has walked his own path. Hiss. No wonder the Son of God of the Jun family is such a monster. He has already taken that step. What a monster. But this also means that the Son of God of the Jun family will never be able to attain the Tao. Does that mean that the Son of God of the Jun family can only cultivate to the level of a quasi-emperor at most, and can't truly become a great emperor? Although a quasi-emperor is already very strong, it's still not enough in this world of great battles. Many geniuses were whispering to each other. How could this be? The faces of Jiang Xingyi and the others changed. They didn't expect this to happen. On the other hand, Ji Qingyi, who was watching the battle from the side, had a look of realization on her face. Previously, Jun Xiaoyaro walked his own path in the lower world. It's destined to be a path that defies the heavens. The heavens won't allow it to exist. Now that the Heavenly Law voice has spoken, Jun Xiaoyaro won't be able to break through. He won't be a threat to the successor of the sect of human immortals, Ji Qingyi murmured in her heart. But strangely, she didn't feel happy. Instead, there was a thoughtful look in her eyes. Goddess Eternal Calamity also murmured in her heart, as expected, the fateless ones are existences that even the Heavenly Law is afraid of. It won't allow them to attain the Tao. At this moment, no one present mocked or ridiculed Jun Xiaoyaro. They only sighed and felt pity. He was a genius who had shocked the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries. But now, his path forward had been forcefully restricted. The worst thing was that the will of the immortal domain had only spoken after the Heavenly Law crown was formed. This was simply killing someone's heart. Any other genius wouldn't be able to bear such a difference. Their Tao heart would be shaken. Even Supreme Du Tuo sighed. It was such a pity. If Jun Xiaoyaro, who was already a genius, combined with the Heavenly Law crown, his talent and strength would definitely be the most monstrous existence in history. There was no one who could compare to him. Everyone looked at Jun Xiaoyaro. To their surprise, Jun Xiaoyao's face was very calm. It was so calm that there wasn't even the slightest ripple. Could it be that the Son of God of the Jun family is having a breakdown on the inside? Some people asked suspiciously. Finally, Jun Xiaoyaro laughed. It was a sneer, a mockery to the heavens. The ancestor of the Jun family, the heaven-abandoning great emperor, once said that the Heavenly Law crown is just a burden. I'll attain the Tao and become an immortal through 10,000 tribulations. If I, Jun Xiaoyao, want to become an immortal, why would I need the approval of the heavenly law? Jun Xiaoyao was a transmigrator with peerless talent and the system. Ever since he was born, he had swept through everything and had never tasted defeat. His monstrous appearance had suppressed all eternity. In front of him, what was the heavens? Did they have the right to block his path? Hearing this, the expressions of the geniuses present were very interesting. Jun Xiaoyao was probably the only one in the younger generation who dared to talk back to the heavens. Heavens, do you want to prove that I can't beat you? Why don't we set up a bet? Jun Xiaoyao raised his head and looked up at the starry sky. His tone was calm, but it was a shocking sound. When I, the Son of God, attain the Tao and become an immortal, I will definitely destroy the heavenly law and rebuild the order of heaven and earth. As soon as his words fell, the universe shook. Chapter 594. The void shook for thousands of miles, and the galaxy was overturned. Thunder rumbled in the depths of the universe. That was the rumbling of the chaotic lightning tribulation. Jun Xiaoyao's words angered the heavens. All the sky prides trembled, and their faces turned pale. Under this heavenly might, they felt as small as ants. Is the Jun family's son of God crazy? Is he going against the heavens? No matter how strong he is, he can't go against the will of the celestial realm. Everyone exclaimed and was shocked. Jun Xiaoyao had no scruples. He was frivolous to the core. Who can play against the heavens? I, Jun Xiaoyao, can. Not only that, I want to beat the heavens by half a step, Jun Xiaoyao said with a smile. His long hair danced in the wind, and he was full of immortal energy. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyao's heroic appearance was deeply engraved in everyone's eyes. Since ancient times, there had been countless geniuses, but only Jun Xiaoyao dared to challenge the heavens and play against the heavens. What? You don't dare! Jun Xiaoyao stood in the sky with his hands behind his back. Rumble. Thunder rumbled in the depths of the universe. Billions of thunderbolts intertwined, and the great Tao rumbled, forming an extremely terrifying scene. Even Supreme Du Tuor wore a stern look when he sensed the heavenly might. Suddenly, 7 rays of light shot out from the depths of the universe's chaos. Then, they floated above Jun Xiaoyao. Everyone took a closer look and found that there were 7 seals. Those seals were similar to the seal of Tao affirmation, but they were different. The aura was much stronger than the ordinary seal of Tao affirmation. It felt like dozens of seals of Tao affirmation had merged together to form these 7 seals. However, compared to the heavenly Tao crown formed by hundreds of seals of Tao affirmation, it was still much weaker. Could that be the seal of Tao affirmation? Supreme Du Tuor couldn't help but exclaim when he saw the 7 seals. The seal of Tao affirmation was much stronger than the ordinary seal of Tao affirmation. In the past, when the Emperor Road opened, there had been geniuses who had obtained the seal of Tao affirmation. However, even in the most prosperous era before, only 2 or 3 seal of Tao affirmation had appeared. And now, 7 of them had appeared at the same time. This was simply too confusing. As these 7 Tao verification Emperor seals appeared, the heavenly sound of the great Tao started to resound throughout the universe. The seal of the 7 emperors, defying the 7 emperors, slaying the anomalies of the ages, and obtaining the heavenly Tao's coronation. The voice spread across the 9 heavens' immortal realm. The 7 seals of Tao realization tore the space apart and scattered across the 9 heavens' immortal realm. No one could capture the trajectory of these Tao verification emperor seals. No one knew which prodigies would be able to obtain the 7 Tao verification emperor seals. The 7 defiant emperors? Could it be that? Will there be 7 sovereigns who will fuse with the 7 emperor seals of Tao validation to deal with the Son of God of the Jun family? Very likely. Didn't you hear? Slaying the ancient anomalies and obtaining the heavenly Tao's coronation. What he meant was, who among the sovereigns who obtained the 7 marks of proving the way could kill the divine child of the Jun family? Whoever can replace him will be crowned the heavenly Tao crown. Many geniuses were having a heated discussion. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. The will of the 9 heavens immortal realm had accepted Jun Xiaoyao's challenge. It had set up 7 chess pieces to trap and kill Jun Xiaoyao. Who could kill Jun Xiaoyao? Whoever could obtain the heavenly Dao crown would have the chance to become a martial monarch. No one could resist the temptation of achieving the martial monarch realm. Interesting. This is very interesting. It's a rare game, a duel between the son of God of the Jun family and the heavenly Dao. Everyone fixed their eyes on Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao was the first person to challenge the heaven's immortal realm. Jun Xiaoyao remained calm when he saw the 7 emperor's seals flying across the sky. Setting up 7 chess pieces to trap and kill me, are you trying to play a game of survival? Or do you think I'm the final boss? Jun Xiaoyao said with a hollow grin. It felt like 7 warriors teaming up to slay an evil dragon. And he, Jun Xiaoyao, was the super evil dragon. Humph, interesting. Jun Xiaoyao, will accept the challenge. Jun Xiaoyao flung his sleeves and glared at the heavens. He would let the will of the 9 heavens immortal realm and everyone else know. The 7 chess pieces were too weak to withstand a single blow from him. The tribulation of chaos deep inside the universe dissipated. It was obvious that the will of the 9 heavens immortal realm had set up a trial. 7 geniuses of the martial dominator realm were qualified to challenge Jun Xiaoyao. The geniuses chosen by the will of the heavens immortal realm were most likely peerless geniuses. Their cultivation would not be too weak. The geniuses chosen by the will of the 9 heavens immortal realm must be extremely terrifying. If they merge with the Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation, they might actually pose a great threat to the son of God of the Jun family. That's right, those geniuses are definitely forbidden existences on the ancient road of ultimate. Many geniuses were excited. Who had ever seen a duel with the heavens immortal realm? I must go to the ancient road of ultimate and witness the end of the son of God of the Jun family with my own eyes. That's right, I'm curious to see if the son of God of the Jun family can carve out his own path in the era of great battles. Meanwhile, the heavenly Dao crown shuddered slightly, as if it was going to soar into the sky. Jun Xiaoyao shook his head and said coldly, even if I can't merge with it, it's still mine. Jun Xiaoyao raised his hand. The myriad chi cauldron rose into the sky and suppressed the heavenly Dao crown. The heavenly Dao crown shuddered vigorously while emitting the brilliance of the great Dao. However, wisps of myriad chi poured down from the myriad chi cauldron like a huge mountain. Following a loud bang, following a loud crash, the heavenly Dao crown broke into hundreds of Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation. The Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation scattered in all directions. Jun Xiaoyao raised his hand and executed the 3rd seal of the immortal forbidding seal. In an instant, the surrounding void was branded with sealing runes, imprisoning the Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation. Then, the myriad chi cauldron fell and suppressed the hundreds of Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation. Dead silence, all the geniuses around were dumbfounded. Jun Xiaoyao was too overbearing. He was biting off a piece of meat from the heavenly Dao. As expected, the Son of God is the Son of God. He doesn't play by the rules. A little giant smiled bitterly. Now, all the Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation in the Huangtian mystic realm were in Jun Xiaoyao's hands. The other geniuses did not have a single Emperor's seal of Dao confirmation. For a moment, many geniuses looked at Jun Xiaoyao with burning eyes. Even some of the men looked at him with burning eyes as if they were looking at a peerless beauty. The 9-headed lion rubbed its claws and coughed dryly. Well, master, I've been lacking Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation recently. Jun Xiaoyao smiled slightly when he saw this. Although he could not integrate the Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation himself, he could go to the ancient road of ultimate and exchange it for treasures with other geniuses. Or, he could give it to his own people. Both were good choices. Jun Xiaoyao would not throw away this fat piece of meat. Sister Shengyi, Luo Li, cousin, and Yi Yu, come here and get your Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation, Jun Xiaoyao said with a smile. As a result, the strangest scene on the entire Emperor's Road appeared. A scene that was absolutely impossible to see in the past appeared in front of them. Jun Xiaoyao was like a wholesaler, selling Emperor's seals of Dao confirmation at a discount. Of course, these relatives and friends did not want to pay. As for the other geniuses, they all wanted to cry but had no tears. especially those geniuses who did not have a good relationship with the Jun family or had conflicts with them. They were about to cry. This was too much. In the past, countless geniuses fought desperately for the emperor's seals of Dao confirmation. Now, they were all in Jun Xiaoyao's pocket and were given away like cabbages. In the crowd, a beautiful woman with a jade-like face bit her lip and stomped her feet. She was so angry that her teeth itched. She also wanted an emperor's seal of Dao confirmation. How could she move Jun Xiaoyao? Chapter 595. At this moment, the strangest scene was happening in the heavenly Dao arena. Jun Xiaoyao stood beside the myriad qi cauldron and handed out seals of Dao affirmation as if they were cabbages. There were hundreds of seals of Dao affirmation. Jun Xiaoyao had no use for them, but he could give some to his friends and family first. He was merciless when harvesting his enemies, even digging up their roots. However, he was never stingy with his own people. Sister Shengyi, how many do you need? Jun Xiaoyao asked. Seeing this scene, many women's eyes turned red with jealousy. Jun Xiaoyao did not say how many he wanted to give. Instead, he gave as many as Jiang Shengyi wanted. I don't need too many. A few are enough. Jiang Shengyi also felt a sweetness in her heart. Jun Xiaoyao obviously treated her the best out of all of them. All right. Jun Xiaoyao waved his hand and gave Jiang Shengyi 20 seals of Dao affirmation. Holy **T. All the sky prides sucked in a deep breath, their eyes turning red. Those were 20 seals of Dao affirmation. If they could refine and fuse with them, they could definitely become an outlawed sky pride. That's too much. Jiang Shengyi was also surprised and happy. What about me? Jiang Luoli asked in a soft voice. You too. Jun Xiaoyao also gave Jiang Luoli 20 seals of Dao affirmation. Brother Xiaoyao is the best. Jiang Luoli smiled brightly, 2 deep dimples appearing on her pretty face. What about me? What about me? Xiao Moxian raised her hand and shouted. Jun Xiaoyao also gave out seals of Dao affirmation. Xiao Moxian was overjoyed, the smile on her face unable to fade. Her decision to befriend Jun Xiaoyao back then could not have been more wise. After that, Lord Grimm, Jun Lingsang, and the other sequences of the Jun family naturally obtained a lot of seals of proving the way. There were also Jun Xiaoyao's followers, Yi Yu, Yang Qingying, and Goddess Eternal Calamity, who had also obtained the seal of proving the way. As for the river of forgetfulness that had yet to arrive, he would also leave some for him. In addition, the 9-headed lion, Princess Longji, Golden-Winged Roc, Mu Yu Han, Xiao Xian and Jiang Tianyang of the Jiang family were also given seals of proving of Dao. Seeing that those people were able to obtain the seal of proving doctrine so effortlessly, all the geniuses were so jealous that they felt like they were about to explode. Ji Qingyi shook her head. It was impossible for her to not feel a ripple in her heart. However, she also knew that Jun Xiaoyao would never give her the seal of verification, even for the sake of the successor of the Ren Immortal sect. Therefore, Ji Qingyi left directly. Out of sight, out of mind. In the crowd, there was another woman with a graceful body and a perfect face, Yang Rumeng. Her emotions were very unstable. Previously, she had obtained a seal of verification with great difficulty. In the end, it had been taken away. Now that she saw Jun Xiaoyao giving her the seal of verification, she felt very indignant. However, Yang Rumeng was not a fool. Now, she wanted to use force to take the seal of verification from Jun Xiaoyao. She could only say that she was dreaming. However, Yang Ruyu really wanted the seal of verification. Biting her lips slightly, Yang Rumeng strode over to Jun Xiaoyao with her long legs. Seeing Yang Rumeng, Jun Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows slightly. What's the matter? Jun Xiaoyao said lightly. Him and Yang Rumeng. There was no big grudge between them. They had some small conflicts before. However, it was not a big deal. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's attitude, Yang Rumeng secretly gritted her teeth. When they were in the lower realm, Jun Xiaoyao had once pinched her calf and asked her what her true form was. This despicable guy, even if he was already a king in Emperor Road. However, his attitude still made her very unhappy. I want the seal of verification. Yang Ruming exhaled softly, calming herself down, and said, "Are we close?" Zhang Xiaoyaro said lightly, "Is there a seal of verification among them?" "It used to belong to me," Yang Ruming said. "You know that it used to belong to me, but it's mine now." Zhang Xiaoyao's attitude was cold. "You." Yang Ruming stomped her feet. She really wanted to bite Zhang Xiaoyao. "Of course. It's not impossible for you to have it. However, what's the price?" Zhang Xiaoyao's tone was slightly playful. Yang Ruming took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling. Suddenly, a smile appeared on her face. "You kept touching my legs when you were in the lower realm. Don't you like it now?" "My legs are not bad." Yang Ruming's words were a little shocking. Many prodigies looked at Zhang Xiaoyaro with admiration. She was indeed a romantic young man, let alone a peerless figure like Zhang Xiaoyao. "Big brother Xiaoyao, what is this woman talking about?" Jiang Luoli puffed her cheeks and said angrily. Was he bullying her because she had short legs? Jiang Xingyi lowered her eyes and did not say a word. After a while, she said in a weak voice, "Xiaoyao, if you really like me, you don't have to find someone else. Can't you have my legs?" Jiang Xingyi's slender and beautiful legs could definitely be played with for 100 years. Ahem. Zhang Xiaoyaro coughed dryly. Yang Yu Meng was here to play dirty, splashing dirty water on him. He was careless and did not dodge. Of course, this was just a small episode. In the end, Yang Ruming exchanged a piece of information for a seal of proving of way. The information was that the little demon empress of the demon god palace had her eyes on Zhang Xiaoyaro. Damn, the little demon empress, the ruler of the demon god palace, one of the most beautiful women in the Huangtian mystic realm. Ah, it's good to be handsome. Looks like even if Zhang Xiaoyaro can't prove his Dao and become a great emperor in the future, he can rely on his face to live off women. The prodigies looked at him with envy. So what if he was imprisoned by the heavenly Dao? Cultivation was a temporary thing, but being handsome was a lifelong thing. In the end, everyone around Zhang Xiaoyaro received a seal of proving of way. Zhang Xiaoyaro still had more than 100 seals of proving of way left. Do you need them? Zhang Xiaoyaro looked at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen shook his head slightly and said, "No, but before I challenge you next time, don't die." As soon as Yi Guchen finished speaking, he put the Emperor Slayer on his back and turned to leave. His back was cold and arrogant, like a lone wolf. Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. Having such an opponent was one of the joys of life. After that, Zhang Xiaoyaro put away the 100 or so seals of proving of way. They might be useful in the future. The Emperor's Road of the Huangtian mystic realm had finally come to an end. There was no doubt that Zhang Xiaoyaro was the king of the Emperor's Road of the Huangtian mystic realm. However, he was different from the other kings of the Emperor's Road. As the king of the Emperor's Road, Zhang Xiaoyaro would not be blessed by the Huangtian mystic realm's fate. He could not even merge with the seals of proving of way. He even started a game with the will of the mystic realm. In the future, he would fight against the 7 chess pieces of the heavenly path, the 7 emperors. It could be said that everyone would pay attention to the battle between Zhang Xiaoyaro and the 7 emperors. The 7 warriors would challenge Zhang Xiaoyao's position as the big boss. Whoever could kill Zhang Xiaoyaro would be crowned with the heavenly path crown. The master of the heavenly book, the 7 emperors, the other kings of the Emperor's Road, and the outlawed sky prides. It seems that the ancient road of ultimate will not be too boring. Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was calm. The Emperor's Road of the Huangtian mystic realm was child's play to him. It was not challenging at all. Even the strongest person on the saint leaderboard, Yi Guchen, could not pose any threat to him. It was lonely to be at the top, and it was lonely to be invincible. Don't let me down, all enemies in the road ahead. I, the Son of God, will grant you the chance to challenge the gods. Zhang Xiaoyaro put his hands behind his back and looked like a god. He stood in the starry sky like the most powerful boss, looking at the ancient road of ultimate ahead. Chapter 596. The Huangtian Immortal Realm's monarch path had come to an end. However, the entire 9 Heavens Immortal Realm was in an uproar because of the battle between Zhang Xiaoyaro and the will of the heavenly path. especially the 7 emperors that the great Tao of heavenly Tao mentioned. Everyone was curious to know who the 7 emperors that were able to acquire the seal of Tao validation and challenge the rare ones were. On the monarch path of a certain immortal realm, inside a magnificent ancient heaven palace, a young figure with a terrifying aura was sitting with his legs crossed in a brilliant glow. 5 wisps of immortal chi circled his body, emitting an overwhelming aura. He was like a heavenly emperor hovering above the 9 heavens. At that instant, a ray of light pierced the sky and landed in the heaven palace, floating in front of the terrifying figure. It was the seal of Tao validation with the aura of the great Tao. The young figure slowly reached out his hand. His palm was covered in runes, like the hand of an ancient deity. He grabbed the seal of Tao validation in his hand and scanned it with his divine sense. He immediately understood everything. Humph, I see, a ruler of the monarch path that even the heavenly path doesn't acknowledge. How ridiculous. The figure spoke with a cold and disdainful tone. 7 emperors are indeed making a mountain out of a molehill to deal with someone like him. But, the heavenly Tao crown is mine. As soon as he finished speaking, the figure didn't hesitate to fuse the emperor's seal of Tao verification into his body. Once it merged with his body, it meant he had accepted the challenge. Rumble. Inside the ancient heaven palace, the aura of the great Tao circulated, as an auspicious sign took place. In a single breath, a 6th and 7th strands of immortal chi appeared on the young man's body. After merging with the seal of Tao validation, he immediately had 2 extra wisps of immortal chi. Meanwhile, his cultivation had improved once again, reaching the great perfection stage of the sacred realm. Currently, not many among the younger generation were able to reach the great perfection stage of the sacred realm. Most of them were in the forbidden realm. Meanwhile, some of the followers outside the heaven palace were in awe and admiration when they sensed the terrifying aura inside the heaven palace. Master Gu Tiez's cultivation has improved again. Yes, with Lord Gu Tiez's strength, he will definitely be able to restore the reputation of the Supreme Xian Ting. Together with Lady Ling Yang, the name of the Supreme Xian Ting will spread across the 9 heavens immortal realm once again. The tone of these followers was filled with incomparable fanaticism. In another blessed enclave that was full of immortal chi, a peerless figure was shrouded in immortal light. An emperor seal of Tao verification also floated in front of her. The beautiful figure slowly stretched out her slender hand and grabbed the emperor seal of Tao verification. However, it didn't immediately fuse into his body. What kind of peerless figure is he that he needs to be targeted by 7 rulers? This has piqued my interest. The beautiful figure played with the emperor seal of Tao verification for a while before finally putting it away. Although the heavenly Tao crown is very attractive, it's not that easy to make me a chess piece, the voice murmured softly. Her voice was as pleasant as the sounds of nature. She decided to investigate first before making a judgment. On top of that, the remaining 5 emperor seals of Tao verification were also searched for suitable candidates. All in all, it was because of the game between Jun Xiaoyaro and the heavenly Tao. The ancient road, which was not peaceful to begin with, became even more turbulent. Apart from the 7 rulers chosen by the heavenly Tao, the rest of the rulers of the Emperor Road and the outlawed Sky Prides were very interested when they heard that an extraordinary one had appeared in the Huangtian immortal realm. Their eyes were burning with battle intent. Without exception, all of them wanted to step on Jun Xiaoyaro and rise to the top. Whoever killed Jun Xiaoyaro would immediately become famous on the ancient road of ultimate, spreading their name across the 9 heavens immortal realm. They could even replace the 7 defiant sovereigns and claim the heavenly Tao crown. Therefore, some of the outlawed Sky Prides began to sharpen their weapons and prepare for the battle. Meanwhile, in the Huangtian immortal realm, the news about Jun Xiaoyaro was also spreading like wildfire. The forces of the ancient star domain that were angry and dissatisfied with Jun Xiaoyaro, such as the Qianyaro Jin dynasty and the War Demon Cave, were all gloating and secretly mocking him. The heavenly Tao has its own reincarnation. This is the consequence of Jun Xiaoyao's killing. That's right. He has such talent but can't attain the Tao. Isn't this more painful than killing him? The wicked will be punished by the heavens. In the end, Zhang Xiaoyao's fate is nothing more than a sad exit. These forces did not dare to openly mock him because of the Zhang family's reputation. However, they were secretly gloating over his misfortune and were very happy. They were not the only ones. Many people also thought that Zhang Xiaoyao was not in a good mood right now. After all, the pressure of going against the heavenly Tao was too great. If it were anyone else, it would be difficult for them to relax. Even if one lost in a battle, there was still a chance to turn things around. However, Zhang Xiaoyao was fighting against the heavens. There was only one result if he failed, and that was death. Many cultivators thought that Zhang Xiaoyao should be crazily cultivating under the pressure and making all kinds of preparations. However, the truth was, at this moment, in a private courtyard overflowing with immortal qi in Hangu Pass. A spirit spring was located in the middle, and the spiritual qi was dense like mist. Zhang Xiaoyao was half immersed in the spirit spring, and his entire body was relaxed and comfortable. His back was leaning against Jiang Shengyi's delicate body. Jiang Shengyi was only wearing a tight-fitting undergarment that was soaked in the mist, outlining her hazy and beautiful curves. She was massaging Zhang Xiaoyao's shoulders. Although Jiang Shengyi was also worried about the game between Zhang Xiaoyao and the heavenly Tao, she was more confident in Zhang Xiaoyao. She believed in Zhang Xiaoyao. Even such a difficult challenge was just a slightly more troublesome test for him. Xiaoyao, are you comfortable? Jiang Shengyi asked gently. Of course I'm comfortable. Who in this world can make a goddess like Sister Shengyi serve them like this? Zhang Xiaoyao was relaxed and comfortable. The world probably thought that he was under great pressure now. They didn't know that he was even more relaxed and enjoying himself than before. The more the heavenly Tao oppressed him, the more carefree he was. Jiang Shengyi blushed when she heard this. Zhang Xiaoyao was getting better and better at flirting. At this moment, footsteps suddenly sounded beside the spirit spring. Who is it? Jiang Shengyi was slightly surprised. This was her private courtyard, and no one could come close. Sister Shengyi, in the mist, Jiang Luoli walked over with a blushing face and a veil covering her naked body with both hands. I want to take a bath too. Jiang Luoli rolled her eyes and said weakly. Although she said this, her eyes were constantly glancing at Zhang Xiaoyao. It was clear that she had an ulterior motive. Humph, there's also me. A soft snort sounded out. Xiao Moxian had also followed. She also wore a thin undergarment. Her small face was half pure and half charming. She looked mischievous. Who told you to come? Jiang Luoli arched an eyebrow. What, you're here and I can't come? Xiao Moxian said. When the two lollis met, they would always quarrel. However, to everyone's astonishment, Yang Qingying actually came as well. Her temperament was dark and cold, but at this moment she was also a bit red. Young master, Qingying has come to massage your legs. Then, Princess Longji, Mu Yuhan, Zhun Mulan, and Zhun Shuahuang all arrived. They all wore thin undergarments, revealing their graceful curves and snow-white arms and legs. In fact, even Xiao Xianer had come. Zhang Xiaoyao was stunned. After a moment, he said, Are you going to have a group exercise? Chapter 597. The women around Zhang Xiaoyao were all tall and thin, each with their own unique temperament. Some were cold and elegant. Some were delicate. Some were gentle. Some were noble. It could be said that if any other man could obtain one of them, that would be the greatest fortune of 3 lifetimes. But to Zhang Xiaoyao, he had seen so many of them that he was actually quite ordinary. He wasn't a saint who was pure of heart and few desires, but he also wasn't a walking cannon. Before he truly reached his goal, he wouldn't stop for anyone. What? You don't welcome me? Then I'll leave. Zhun Mulan said as she supported her heavy chest. Everyone, please do as you wish. Zhang Xiaoyao smiled and shook his head. Little big brother Xiaoyao, with so many beauties accompanying you, you should be content. This is the 7-step fall that I brought. Xiao Moxian giggled as she took out a large jug of wine. 7-step fall meant that after drinking, one would fall down after taking 7 steps. Big brother Xiaoyao, I'll pour you some wine. Jiang Luoli took the initiative to take the wine cup and pour Zhang Xiaoyao some wine. Yang Qingying sat down on the other side of Zhun Xiaoyao, massaging his legs. Zhun Shuahuang wore a blue dress and sat on the other side of Zhun Xiaoyao, massaging his back. In a way, this could be considered a group exercise. Zhun Xiaoyao took the wine cup that Jiang Luoli poured and drank it all. Is this the feeling of being drunk on a beauty's lap? No wonder everyone wants to be an emperor. But I, Zhun Xiaoyao, am 10,000 times better than an emperor, Xiaoyao. Zhun Xiaoyao smiled. As if he still wasn't satisfied, he tossed aside the wine cup and began to drink. Little big brother Xiaoyao, do you want to be drunk for 3 years? Xiao Moxian shouted out. After drinking this jug of wine, even if an ordinary proud son of heaven didn't die, it wouldn't be a problem for them to be drunk for several years. But Zhun Xiaoyao didn't care. With his physique and cultivation, it was impossible for him to get drunk. However, Zhun Xiaoyao did not deliberately suppress his drunkenness. He wanted to get drunk. Zhun Xiaoyao casually recited as he drank. Born to be the leader of men, only I and the heavens share the same lifespan. Treading on the waves of the mortal world with 2 feet, shouldering the worries of the past and present with 1 shoulder. 30 achievements, dust and soil, 8,000 miles of cloud and moon. Don't be idle. You've lost your youth, and it's empty and sorrowful. East of the great river, after all the waves have been washed away, there is only me, Xiaoyao. Zhun Xiaoyao drank a pot of wine, black hair fluttering in the wind, free and unrestrained. He was like an immortal in wine. As he chanted, his arrogance soared to the heavens. It swept up the sun, moon, and stars, and shook the firmament. At this moment, the entire Hanggu Pass was shaking. What's going on? What happened? It's the son of God of the Zhun family. He seems to be reciting a poem. The son of God of the Zhun family is still in the mood to recite poetry. Born to be the leader of men, only I and the heavens share the same lifespan. Is the son of God of the Zhun family comparing himself to the heavens, provoking the heavens? Some of the geniuses were carefully analyzing the poem. They trembled for a moment. Don't be idle. You've lost your youth, and it's empty and sorrowful. Some cultivators muttered. Why? They were actually touched. Tears flowed from their eyes. This emperor's road was too cruel. It was so cruel that some of the geniuses' Dao hearts collapsed, unable to persist at all. They were either dispirited in Imperial Pass or preparing to return home. However, at this moment, when they heard this poem, some of the geniuses' eyes gradually lit up. The son of God of the Zhun family is so heroic even when playing against the heavens. What do our difficulties count for? That's right. You've lost your youth, and it's empty and sorrowful. I will continue on this path. Even if I'm destined to be ordinary in the end, I will torment myself until I die. This is the path that belongs to me. Many cultivators were affected, and their eyes reddened. There were even some who bowed deeply at 90 degrees to Zhun Xiaoyao's residence. Zhun Xiaoyao's words woke them up. He let them know what it meant to fight against the heavens. It was endless joy. At this moment, next to the spiritual spring in the courtyard, all the women present seemed to have become infatuated. At this moment, Zhun Xiaoyao was wearing a simple white robe. He held a wine pot in one hand and recited a poem. His heroic spirit was boundless between heaven and earth. His figure swayed, as if he was drunk, but not drunk. His handsome face was free and unrestrained. His drunken state was like a jade mountain that was about to collapse. What a breathtaking scene this was. It could simply capture the heart of any woman in an instant. Unfortunately, only the women present could appreciate it. The great river flows east, and the waves are washed away. Among the outstanding figures of the ages, only I, Xiaoyao. Jiang Shengyi muttered. The more she thought about it, the more she liked it. This was her sweetheart, a peerless man who hid the sun and moon in his chest, whose aura shook the world. Big brother Xiaoyao. Jiang Luoli was intoxicated as she listened. Zhun Xiaoyao was too outstanding, so outstanding that she couldn't extricate herself. I never thought that little big brother Xiaoyao would be like this when he's drunk. It's a bit too handsome. Xiao Moxian's face was flushed red. When she said that she would find a way to become Zhang Xiaoyao's concubine, the truth was that she was joking. But now, she discovered that her heart really was moved. His talent is unparalleled, his talent is shocking. Mu Yuhan muttered to herself, also dazed. She never thought that Zhang Xiaoyao would not only have unparalleled talent and unparalleled strength, but he would also have such talent. A casual poem from him was filled with heroic spirit. It was enough to be a classic that would be passed down through the ages. The arrogant Princess Longji could only sigh in admiration. Her eyes couldn't help but shine. The word perfect seemed to be created for Zhang Xiaoyao. This boy Xiaoyao, he really likes to show off. Zhang Mulan mumbled. Although she said this, her face was still a bit red. It was hard to imagine that even this tomboy would blush. Finally, Zhang Xiaoyao passed out drunk. He had allowed himself to be drunk on his own initiative. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to be drunk even if he drank 10,000 bottles of seven-step wine. Jiang Shengyi and the other women were also drunk. They weren't drunk, they were drunk because of Zhang Xiaoyao. The next day, when they woke up, they didn't see Zhang Xiaoyao's figure. Xiaoyao. Jiang Shengyi's heart trembled. They still needed to refine the seal of Dao affirmation in Hangu Pass, so it was impossible for them to step onto the ancient ultimate road so early. At this time, outside the courtyard, there was a loud commotion. Jiang Shengyi and the other women put on their clothes and went out. They saw Lord Grimm and the others. "Where is Xiaoyao?" Jiang Shengyi asked, her heart tightening. Jiang Luoli and the others were also worried. Lord Grimm sighed. "Go to the city gate and take a look." Then, the group arrived at the exit of Hangu Pass. They found that a large group of prodigies had gathered here. Even Supreme Du Tuor was there. Their gazes fell on the city wall. Jiang Shengyi glanced over and saw 2 lines of words engraved on the city wall. "When I become an immortal, I dare the sun and moon to change the heavens." The boldness of the strokes stunned the ages. Their heroic spirit soared to the heavens. Among the younger generation, there was only one person who could have such boldness, Zhang Xiaoyao. His already left, Jiang Shengyi muttered absent-mindedly. A tear fell from the corner of her eye. There was no farewell. There was no goodbye. After getting drunk, Zhang Xiaoyao stepped onto the ancient road of ultimate all by himself. The strong were always lonely. Chapter 598. Outside Hangu Pass, deep in the starry sky. Looking back at Hangu Pass, Zhang Xiaoyao retracted his gaze and let out a soft sigh. There would be a lot of trouble on the ancient ultimate road. If he traveled with Jiang Shengyi and the others, it would inevitably affect them. Moreover, to enter the ancient ultimate road, he had to pass through the Dragon Gate. At that time, he might not necessarily land in the same place. Therefore, Zhang Xiaoyao had already planned to travel alone. "Sorry, Shengyi, Luo Li, and everyone else. I will wait for you on the road ahead." Zhang Xiaoyao knew that whether it was the sequence of the Zhang family or Jiang Shengyi and the other women, they were all stubborn and had their own perseverance. Although traveling with Zhang Xiaoyao on the ancient ultimate road would allow them to be protected and their lives would not be in danger, it was not necessarily a good thing for them. Everyone needed to be tempered. Zhang Xiaoyao shook his head slightly and calmed himself down. He was not the kind of person who would be sad over the passing of seasons. "Let's continue moving forward. My road is still very long." Zhang Xiaoyao felt relieved and smiled slightly. His game with the heavenly path had just begun. There seemed to be no end to the desolate universe. It had been several months since Zhang Xiaoyao left Hangu Pass. He had been traveling through the starry sky. After obtaining the complete space scroll, Zhang Xiaoyao was extremely proficient in the way of space. The way of space and the extreme speed of the Kuanping made Zhang Xiaoyao's speed dozens of times faster than some starry sky flying ships. "I'm already very far from the Emperor's Road of the Huangtian mystic realm. Haven't I reached the Dragon Gate yet?" Zhang Xiaoyao murmured. Along the way, he recalled the story of Lao Tzu leaving Hangu Pass. The last pass of the Emperor's Road was also called Hangu Pass. Could it be that Lao Tzu on Earth had passed through this starry sky Emperor's Road and left behind a faintly discernible legend? Shaking his head slightly, Zhang Xiaoyaro settled his thoughts. At this time, there was a faint sound of people in front of him. Zhang Xiaoyaro looked over and saw a dense crowd of talented cultivators traveling through the starry sky ahead. There were people of all races, wearing strange clothes and different auras. It was obvious that not all of these cultivators were from the Huangtian mystic realm. There were also many who came from the Emperor's Road of other immortal domains. Farther away, there was an incomparably vast bronze door. The bronze gate was tens of thousands of feet tall, and it stood in the depths of the universe. It exuded an ancient, desolate aura. And on the surface of the bronze gate, there were many lifelike true dragons carved on it. Under the refraction of the starlight, it seemed to be alive. "This is the Dragon Gate," Zhang Xiaoyaro muttered to himself. Dragon's Gate was derived from the meaning of carp leaping over the Dragon's Gate. Could he cross the Emperor Road? A heavenly son who had reached the Dragon Gate? All of them were outstanding talents. They were like carps. Once they crossed the Dragon Gate, they would have the opportunity to transform into dragons. Of course. In the end, whether one would become a dragon or a corpse buried on the ancient path would depend on one's strength and luck. At this moment, what about the geniuses who had arrived at the Dragon Gate? One by one, they stepped into it. Every time a cultivator steps in, the Dragon Gate would light up with the radiance of the Great Tao. There were some people who could trigger a radiance that reached a height of several hundred feet. Some people, it could cause the radiance of the Great Tao to spread for thousands of feet. Dragon Gate. It was not just a door to the ultimate ancient road. It was also an ancient weapon that had the ability to preliminarily test the talent and strength of a sky pride. Depending on the level of talent, the Great Path brilliance would be different. Generally speaking, sky prides who were at the level of a small powerhouse would be able to trigger 1,000 feet Great Path brilliance. In front of the Dragon Gate, there were also many sky prides who were not in a hurry to step in. Instead, they were sizing up the sky prides who stepped in. TSK, I heard that some time ago, a saint of the Gulan sect stepped into the Dragon Gate and triggered a 50,000 feet Great Path brilliance. What? 50,000 feet? Doesn't that mean it's comparable to 5 small powerhouses? A cultivator said in surprise. That's nothing. Have you heard of the reincarnated ancient Buddha of the Western Paradise sect, Lord Brahma in the Shentian immortal domain? I've heard about it too. That Lord Brahma is so terrifying that he triggered a 20,000 feet Great Path brilliance accompanied by a Buddhist light. It's a taboo among taboos. Some cultivators were talking about the outlawed sky prides with a look of reverence in their eyes. Those who could trigger a 10,000 feet Great Path brilliance were comparable to outlawed sky prides. A 20,000 feet Great Path brilliance was a taboo among taboos. Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was as calm as still water when he heard the sky pride's discussion. As expected, all kinds of monsters have appeared in this era of great battles. But that's all there is to it. Zhang Xiaoyaro shook his head slightly and did not care. His invincible Daoist heart had long been unshakable. He did not even care about the heavens, let alone these young sky prides. Hey, who's that? He's covered in immortal light and has a profound aura. Some cultivators also noticed Zhang Xiaoyaro. After all, Zhang Xiaoyao's temperament was too extraordinary. His body was shrouded in immortal light and surrounded by Buddhist light. He stood out like a crane among chickens. Anyone could guess that he was definitely not a simple person. Could it be another small powerhouse? The direction he's coming from seems to be the Huangtian immortal domain. It's the Huangtian immortal domain. Recently, news of the Huangtian immortal domain has spread throughout the ancient road. That's the ancient anomaly, right? I heard that he's the son of God of the Jun family, a family of the clan of the ancients. At the mention of the Huangtian immortal domain, many cultivators from other immortal domains began to talk incessantly. There were not many sky prides from the Huangtian immortal domain present. Most of the sky prides from the Huangtian immortal domain had gathered at Hangu Pass and had not yet set off. Zhang Xiaoyaro could be considered the earliest sky pride from the Huangtian immortal domain to set foot on the ancient road of the ultimate path. Who is that young master? His temperament is extraordinary. There were also female cultivators whose eyes were shining as they asked curiously. Many gazes fell on Zhang Xiaoyao. Zhang Xiaoyao was used to it. His expression was indifferent as he walked towards the Dragon Gate. Guess how many feet of great pathlight that Sky Pride from the Huangtian Immortal Domain will attract. At least a small powerhouse at the level of 10,000 feet. That aura is too profound. Zhang Xiaoyao's actions undoubtedly attracted attention from all directions. Zhang Xiaoyao was half a step into the Dragon Gate. In an instant, the originally silent Dragon Gate began to rumble and tremble. The great pathlight began to surge violently and soared to 10,000 feet in an instant. What? An outlawed Sky Pride of 10,000 feet. All the Sky Prides from the Immortal Domain's Emperor Road were extremely shocked when they saw this scene. Even an outlawed Sky Pride could not attract 10,000 feet of great pathlight when they were half a step into the ancient road of the ultimate path. Unless this person was a taboo among taboos. Zhang Xiaoyao continued to move forward and stepped into the Dragon Gate with one foot. The great pathlight emitted by the Dragon Gate also soared like a geyser. 20,000 feet, 50,000 feet, 100,000 feet, 200,000 feet. In the end, it soared to 10,000 feet. An incomparably dazzling beam of light soared from the Dragon Gate and illuminated the entire dark and lonely universe. The entire ancient road of the ultimate path could see this dazzling light. All the Sky Prides outside the Dragon Gate were stunned. An outlawed Sky Pride was 10,000 feet. 20,000 feet was a taboo among taboos. What was 10,000 feet worth? However, before these Sky Prides could recover from their shock, Zhang Xiaoyao's other foot stepped into the Dragon Gate again. At this time, the great pathlight emitted by the Dragon Gate could no longer be accurately measured. It was as if it had illuminated all 3,000 universes. At the same time, the lifelike true dragon carved on the Dragon Gate began to awaken. In the end, a total of 100 dragon-shaped shadows emerged from the Dragon Gate. They roared into the sky and shook the entire ancient road of the ultimate path. It was as if they were giving a salute to the birth of a king. Chapter 599. All the prodigies around the Dragon Gate held their breaths as they stared blankly at the shocking scene before them. Their minds buzzed in disbelief. The young master shrouded in immortal light before them could not be measured by the word forbidden. He was simply a one-of-a-kind existence. The immeasurable radiance of the great path and the cries of 100 dragons. Even those great emperors or ancient emperors would not be able to cause such a phenomenon when they stepped onto the Dragon Gate ancient road. Some of the prodigies recalled that he came from the direction of the Huangtian mystic realm. In an instant, some of them reacted. Their eyes widened and protruded, and their scalps tingled. Could it be that person? The surrounding prodigies all thought of the person who had triggered the mystic realm's will and fought against the heavens. The anomaly of the ancient era, Zhang Xiaoyao. Just as everyone was about to react, Zhang Xiaoyao's figure had completely disappeared from the Dragon Gate. He had been transported to the ancient road of ultimate. The commotion caused by the Dragon Gate not only shocked the prodigies around it. It also shocked the entire ancient road of ultimate. No matter which corner of the ancient road of ultimate, one could see the endless radiance of the great path released by the Dragon Gate. The cries of the 100 dragons also spread throughout the ancient road of ultimate. In a mysterious area filled with immortal chi on the ancient road of ultimate. A figure with a transcendent aura, surrounded by 8 strands of immortal chi, sat cross-legged in the void. Beside him was a half-illusory figure of a woman in green. She was like a projection. The two of them were talking about something. At that moment, the transcendent figure sensed some abnormality. A pair of immortal eyes looked into the void in the distance. It's him. He has stepped onto the ancient road of ultimate, the figure said calmly. If he steps onto the ancient road of ultimate, no one can stop him, the projection of the woman in green said. Upon closer inspection, the woman in green was Ji Qingyi. He killed my follower and didn't care at all. I can't let him off so easily. Although this transcendent figure was smiling faintly, the temperature of the surrounding area suddenly dropped. Ji Qingyi's projection was silent for a moment. Then she said, before you have full confidence, You'd better not meet him. Oh, what do you mean? Am I inferior to him? The transcendent figure's tone turned cold. That's not it. It's just that there's no need to fight to the death with someone who is destined to never be able to prove his Tao. Ji Qingyi's eyes flashed with a dark light. Hair. My constitution and his. Since both of them were ranked in the top 10 of the 3,000 physiques, they could compete with each other. You don't need to persuade him anymore, the transcendent figure said coldly. In another place, Ji Qingyi opened her eyes. Disperse the projection. A deep look appeared in his eyes. The humanoid divine body, which is best at cultivating and using divine qi, versus the sacred body of the ancients, which has unparalleled divine strength, I wonder who will win. Zhang Xiaoyao? Will you disappoint me? A faint smile appeared on Ji Qingyi's face under the veil. She was from the human immortal sect. The helper of the dual immortal physique. But Ji Qingyi? Hidden very well. He seemed to have his own plans. In another realm, inside the ancient heavenly palace, the outlawed sky pride of the supreme Xian Ting, Jiu Tiezi, had sensed this unusual phenomenon. A look of contemplation flashed in his eyes. Then, he said coldly, even if you're amazing for ages. But if you can't get the approval of the heavenly path, it's all for naught. Whether it's you, Zhang Xiaoyao, or the Zhang family behind you, it's a fool's dream to rule the immortal realm. With the supreme Xian Ting's strength, it was not difficult to find out who the ancient anomaly was. Moreover, the news that Zhang Xiaoyao was the ancient anomaly had already spread from the Huangtian immortal realm's imperial road to the ultimate ancient road. Therefore, Jiu Tiezi also knew. The ancient anomaly was from the Zhang family. Jiu Tiezi did not have a good impression of the Zhang family. After all, the Zhang family had once wanted to replace the supreme Xian Ting and rule the immortal realm. In a blessed place filled with dense spiritual qi and shining with immortal light. The glamorous figure shrouded in a vast immortal light sensed the energy too. The light of the great path is endless, and hundreds of dragons roar together. As expected of the ancient anomaly, another record has been broken. The beautiful figure's voice sounded faintly like the sound of nature. Zhang Xiaoyao? I heard that he's an immortal-like figure. It's time to investigate. It could be said that as soon as Zhang Xiaoyao stepped into the Dragon's Gate, he attracted the attention of all the sky prides of the entire ancient road. Among them, there was no lack of outlawed sky prides, imperial road kings, and other existences. According to the Dark Forest law, Zhang Xiaoyao was already a torch in the dark night. He was simply a target that was noticed by all the opponents hiding in the dark. However, Zhang Xiaoyao himself did not care. Only prey would be afraid of being discovered. A real hunter would wait for his prey to come to him. Accompanied by a distortion of space. All the surrounding celestial bodies seemed to flash around Zhang Xiaoyao at the speed of light. It felt like an instant, but also like 100 years. Zhang Xiaoyao's figure appeared in a vast and lonely starry sky. Is this the ancient road of ultimate? Zhang Xiaoyao looked into the distance and saw nothing but the boundless universe of stars. It was different from the 18 stages of the Emperor Road. The ancient road of ultimate was formed by 108 ancient stars, which could also be seen as 108 stages. The paths were connected to each other, forming a vast and endless ancient road of ultimate trial. Among the 108 ancient stars, some were prosperous life stars, some were cultivation stars with rich great paths, and some were dangerous forbidden lands. There were also dead stars, cursed stars, extinct stars, and so on. Among the ancient stars, there were all kinds of space bandits, chaotic astral sea, star-devouring ancient beasts, and ancient races. This road was 10,000 times more dangerous than the Emperor Road. This is interesting. Zhang Xiaoyao was not afraid at all. Instead, there was a hint of anticipation in his eyes. At this moment, the system's mechanical voice sounded in his mind. Ding. Congratulations to the host. You have arrived at the check-in location. Do you want to sign in? Sign in, Zhang Xiaoyao said. Ding. Congratulations to the host. You have received the 7-star reward, the supreme superpower, Heavenly Death Wheel. As the voice fell, a wave of information flowed into Zhang Xiaoyao's mind. The heavenly death wheel controlled life and death on behalf of the gods and operated the heavens. Life and death were only between a single hand. Heavenly death wheel. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flashed with a strange light. At his current level, some of the superpowers that he had used before, such as the human ruler seal, the combatant formula, and so on, were indeed not enough. The martial arts superpowers that he used the most now were the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, the Thunder Emperor superpower, the Kuan Peng superpower, his self-created Origin Dao superpower, and so on. The heavenly death wheel could enrich his attack methods. Moreover, this divine ability sounded extremely awesome. It had a domineering intent to control life and death on behalf of the gods in the heavens. Perhaps, I can use this superpower to comprehend the intent of life and death and condense the next immortal qi. Zhang Xiaoyao thought. He was very satisfied with this 7-star reward. At this moment, the mechanical voice sounded in his mind again. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The new check-in location has been refreshed. Please sign in at the end of the ancient road. Chapter 600. The end of the ancient road, Zhang Xiaoyao murmured without any change in his expression. That was the place he would definitely reach. I've been checking in for so long, but there are no 9-star or 10-star rewards. Is it time for me to be lucky next time? Zhang Xiaoyao shook his head and smiled. Up until now, the highest star level he had received was an 8-star reward. If the 7-star and 8-star rewards were already so rare and powerful, how rare would the 9-star and 10-star rewards be? They might be rare mystical powers or mystical items. Of course, this was a matter of probability. Zhang Xiaoyao couldn't control it. I just hope this system won't be like a certain factory in my previous life, where the probability of getting a high-star reward was only a few tenths of a percent, Zhang Xiaoyao also joked. Next, Zhang Xiaoyao also thought about what he would do next. The next goal is to continue condensing immortal qi. The second goal is to accumulate foundation and break through to the Saint King level, Zhang Xiaoyao thought. He wasn't used to breaking through level by level. If he wanted to break through, he would do it to his heart's content. Breaking through halfway was the most uncomfortable. Although Zhang Xiaoyao had the foundation left by the divine fetus, it wasn't enough for him to break through a few levels in a row. After becoming a saint, it was difficult to break through a small level, let alone break through to the great perfection stage. Even a genius like Zhang Xiaoyao would need to accumulate some resources and use all kinds of treasures to reach such a level. Then, Zhang Xiaoyao continued to step on the ancient road alone. Compared to the Emperor Road of the Huangtian Immortal Realm, the ancient road was obviously more desolate. However, because this was the ultimate road where the 9 heavens immortal realms gathered, from time to time, some starry sky flying ships could be seen crossing it, or some cultivators flying on strange beasts. They didn't get close to Zhang Xiaoyao. They each went their own way and were very vigilant. Even the geniuses of the same immortal realm who walked on the Emperor Road would be wary of each other and even fight to the death. Not to mention the geniuses of the other immortal realms, their hostility and vigilance would only be stronger. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Zhang Xiaoyao continued to move forward. He didn't even reach the first ancient star on the ancient road. This ancient ultimate road is much longer than the Emperor's Road in the Huangtian mystic realm, Zhang Xiaoyao muttered to himself. At this moment, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and said indifferently, "You've been following me for a few days. What do you want?" In the depths of the starry sky behind them, a fat man in a yellow robe walked forward with an awkward smile on his face. He had a fat belly and a chubby face. "Greetings, young master." The fatty cupped his hands. "What is it?" Zhang Xiaoyao asked calmly. "I'm Lu Ranjia from the profound Heaven Immortal Domain's Heaven's Secret Pavilion. Young master, you can just call me Little Lu. I like to make good friends the most." Looking at young master's ethereal aura, he had the bearing of an immortal. He must be an extraordinary figure. I wonder if I have the fortune to meet him. Did this fatty named Lu Ranjia just flatter him? Meng Bin's small eyes glowed. Tianji sect. Even though it wasn't an undying power, however, he was still quite famous in the mystic heaven celestial realm. "Sorry. I'm not interested in a passerby." Zhang Xiaoyaro turned to leave. Lu Renjia said, "Young master, are you going to the 10th stage to participate in the Assembly of Geniuses?" Zhang Xiaoyaro paused and asked, "What's that?" Lu Renjia smiled and said, "Young master, you don't know? The geniuses of the 9 emperors' roads will gather. It's inevitable that some geniuses who have treasures that they can't use will exchange with others. And the 10th stage of the ancient road, the Shongqiu ancient star, is considered the most prosperous ancient star at the beginning of the ancient road. The business alliance of 10,000 clans will hold an assembly of geniuses there, where all kinds of rare treasures can be exchanged." Lu Renjia's words. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. Didn't he have more than 100 seals of proving of way that he couldn't use? Instead of wasting them, he might as well exchange them for treasures that could help him break through his cultivation level. Seeing that Zhang Xiaoyaro seemed to be tempted, Lu Renjia continued, "At the Assembly of Geniuses, many treasures may appear, such as divine gold, elixirs of immortality, and even elixir fragments." Zhang Xiaoyaro was surprised. That was unexpected. He didn't expect that there would even be elixir fragments. Anything related to immortals was extremely precious, such as the blood of a remnant immortal and the deity fetus. Of course, even the rarest seals of proving of way can be traded. Lu Renjia exclaimed. Zhang Xiaoyaro simply smiled and let it go. He didn't lack seals of proving of way. "You know quite a lot," Zhang Xiaoyaro said. "Of course. The Heaven's Secret Sect is an intelligence organization in the Xiantian mystic realm," Lu Renjia said with a big belly. Seeing that Lu Renjia was still useful, Zhang Xiaoyaro didn't mind bringing him along. Lu Renjia rubbed his hands and asked if he was an overlord. Zhang Xiaoyaro shook his head. Seeing this, Lu Renjia was a little disappointed, but he did not show it. Lu Renjia relaxed and patted Zhang Xiaoyaro on the shoulder as he said, "Haha, buddy. Just follow Brother Lu and you'll have a lot of meat to eat." Zhang Xiaoyaro was speechless. He asked Zhang Xiaoyaro to call him Little Lu just now. Now, he had become Brother Lu. However, Zhang Xiaoyaro didn't lie to Lu Renjia. He was indeed not an overlord, not even an outlawed sky pride. He was an anomaly that couldn't be measured. Next, the two of them went on their way. Zhang Xiaoyaro didn't feel bored with this fatty around to relieve his boredom. Lu Renjia started talking non-stop, from south to north. By the way, the most prosperous Archean royalty force in the Xiantian mystic realm is the Sun God Mountain. Once the 10 crown princes show up, who can beat them? Lu Renjia said. Sun God Mountain. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes dimmed. It seemed that his follower, Yi Yu's Yi clan, was destroyed by the Sun God Mountain. The Sun God Mountain is the top overlord of the Xiantian mystic realm. They started the Immortal War and destroyed the ancient Emperor clan, the Yi clan, and then attacked the Moon God Palace. They were arrogant and domineering. Lu Renjia said. Zhang Xiaoyaro was deep in thought. He had promised to avenge Yi Yu. Now, it seemed that he had the chance. Sun God Mountain, the 10 princes of Jinwu. Zhang Xiaoyao's lips curled into a faint smile. About half a year had passed since then. Zhang Xiaoyaro and Lu Renjia had passed through 7 or 8 ancient life planets. They were finally close to the 10th level, the Shongqiu ancient star. Naturally, there were many dangers during this period. There were all kinds of void forbidden zones, cruel demonic bandits, and alien races in the universe. However, Zhang Xiaoyaro single-handedly overcame all these dangers. Regardless of how dumb Lu Renjia was, he knew that Zhang Xiaoyaro was definitely a formidable figure after all. No wonder you said you're not an overlord. So you're an outlawed sky pride. Lu Renjia's attitude toward Zhang Xiaoyaro became respectful again. He changed from Brother Lu to Little Lu. Zhang Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, did not mind such minor details. As they approached the Shongqiu ancient star, the number of people around them increased. Some powerful sky prides were using ancient beasts to pull their carriages. Some sky prides were riding on phoenixes. All kinds of ships and starships were converging toward the Shongqiu ancient star. I must exchange for a treasure that can condense immortal qi at this sky pride assembly. Hehe, I'm here to meet the goddess Lane's fairy maiden Yuan. Yeah, I heard that fairy maiden Yuan is good at dancing. Her graceful dance of the goddess of Luo could mesmerize all living beings. Some sky prides were talking around them. It's quite lively here. Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was calm. After walking in the desolate universe for so long, it was not bad to come to a place with people occasionally. At this moment, there was a sudden surge of magical power in front of them, and the light of a divine ability spread out. A petite figure was very agile. Like a rabbit, she leaped in the void. Behind her, there were 4 extremely powerful figures chasing after her. One of the figures, who had the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear, was like a demonic mountain. He shouted, "We, the 8 minor saints, are here to hunt down our prey. Everyone else, back off." As he spoke, he waved his hand and slapped a sky pride who was near them into a bloody pulp. Hiss. Could it be 4 of the 8 minor saints of the far ancient imperial family? Lu Renjia took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with fear. The 8 minor saints of the far ancient imperial family? Zhang Xiaoyaro was confused. Young master, you may not know this, but they are 8 powerful sky prides of the far ancient imperial family. They are all on the giant list and are very powerful. Lu Renjia said. At this moment, the petite figure happened to be fleeing towards them. Let's go. Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was calm. On the ultimate ancient road, such a thing was very common. Zhang Xiaoyaro was not the kind of person who would lend a helping hand when he saw injustice. Just as Zhang Xiaoyaro and the others were about to leave, the 4 far ancient imperial family elites had already closed in on them. I told you to get lost, but you didn't. You're blocking the way. The man with the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear casually waved his hand. It was as if a black sky was falling down. Lu Renjia was so scared that his face turned pale. The fat on his face trembled. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes were cold. Chapter 601. TSK, who's that guy? He's so unlucky to be caught in the crossfire. The 8 immemorial royal small saints are all sky prides on the giant leaderboard. If the 8 of them join forces, they can even fight against outlawed sky prides. I've heard that the 8 small saints seem to have some kind of relationship and cooperation with the Sun God Mountain. No wonder the 8 small saints are more arrogant than before. They're connected to the Sun God Mountain. Some sky prides came to a realization. The Sun God Mountain was one of the top Archean royalty in the Shentian immortal realm and one of the immortal overlords. They once started the Immortal War and destroyed the Yi clan. Now, they were besieging the Moon God Palace. They were extremely arrogant and overbearing. The 10 golden crows of the Divine Mountain were even more famous in the ancient Road of Ultimate. They were known as the 10 Blazing Suns, and there were more than 1 outlawed sky prides among them. Some of the sky prides of the Shentian immortal realm looked at Zhang Xiaoyaro with a hint of pity in their eyes. Being targeted by the 8 small saints meant that death was the only outcome. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao's face was cold as he looked at the man who was about to kill him. Zhang Xiaoyaro did not cause trouble, but it did not mean that he was afraid of trouble. Zhang Xiaoyaro could give up if he wanted to. However, he could not let others ask him to leave. Young man, your path is too narrow. Zhang Xiaoyaro shook his head calmly. His eyes were indifferent as if he was looking at an ant. He did not want to get involved, but someone had a death wish. Zhang Xiaoyaro pointed his finger. Lightning wrapped around it and gathered between his fingers. It was as if the ancient Thunder Emperor's finger had broken through time and space. The incomparably thick giant finger wrapped in lightning pointed straight at the burly man. Boom! The man's arm exploded, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Ah! The man let out a scream and spat out blood. His entire body was torn apart as if he was about to be torn apart by the lightning. His face was filled with horror, and he was so shocked that his soul was trembling. He did not expect this mysterious man who was passing by to have such terrifying strength. He urged the power of blood and qi in an attempt to restore his physical body. However, the destructive power of the lightning was too explosive and could not heal him at all. Roar! With a furious roar, the burly man revealed his true form. Shockingly, it was a ferocious black bear. How is this possible? What about the surrounding cultivators who were originally watching the show? At this moment, All of them were dumbfounded and their eyes were wide open. His mouth was wide open. Each of the 8 small saints of the far ancient royal family was a famous existence on the hegemon ranking. Any one of them? Facing an outlawed sky pride? Even if it was only a few dozen to 100 moves, it would still be enough. But now, it couldn't withstand a single finger from the white-robed figure. Lu Renjia, who was standing aside, was also stunned. Did he know that Jun Xiaoyaro was very strong? Unfathomable. But he didn't expect him to be this strong. Just one finger. The black bear spirit, Xiong Batian, one of the 8 small saints, was forced out of his true form. In front of him, the petite figure that was originally fleeing in panic. She also stopped in her tracks. Her ruber-like eyes were filled with shock and joy as she looked back. How dare you? You're courting death. Who are you? The other 3 of the 8 little saints snapped furiously after collecting their thoughts. The Tiango clan, the ghostly flood dragon ridge, and the yellow wind cave's small saints, some of the sky prides said with a trembling voice. 8 small saints. They were from the 8 top far ancient royal families. The severely injured Xiong Batian. They were the overlords of the Black Wind Mountain. The remaining 3 were from the Tiango clan, the ghostly flood dragon ridge, and the yellow wind cave. As for the other 4 of the 8 small saints, they weren't here. I didn't want to cause trouble, but all of you wanted to die. The road is narrow. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was cold. He slowly raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Boom. The lightning energy on Xiong Batian's body surged violently. He let out a heart-wrenching roar of terror. His entire robust beast body was torn apart by the lightning. Blood and bones splattered everywhere, exploding into balls of blood. One of the 8 small saints had fallen. When the sky prides saw this, they subconsciously took a step back. Their hair stood on their backs. Who is this young man shrouded in immortal will? How could he be so terrifying? His methods were strange and powerful. One of the 8 small saints couldn't even resist in front of him. Batian, damn it. Let's attack together and kill him. The remaining 3 small saints roared at the same time. A terrifying beast shadow appeared behind the sky prides of the Tiango clan. It was a Tiango. Its body filled the starry sky as if it was going to swallow the moon. It was rumored that the ancestor of the Tiango clan had the ability to swallow the moon. The sky prides of the ghostly flood dragon ridge was a man wearing a pitch-black flood dragon armor. He held a pitch-black spear in his hand and pierced it towards Jun Xiaoyao. It was as if he had turned into a black flood dragon, roaring and roaring. The remaining sky prides of the yellow wind cave were in the form of weasels. He used his dharmic powers and yellow sand filled the sky. If an ordinary saint fell into it, his body would be ground into a pile of bones and blood. The 3 small saints attacked at the same time. The energy waves caused by the attack shocked everyone. Suddenly, many people's gazes fell on this place. Oh my God! Lu Renjia was so scared that he almost wet his pants. If he was alone, he would have already become a dead soul in the hands of the 8 minor saints. Jun Xiaoyao's expression did not change in the face of the 3 giant sky prides. He stood with his hands behind his back and his aura was calm. What's going on? Why is that person not moving at all? Is he scared out of his wits? Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro standing with his hands behind his back, many of the sky prides around him were shocked. Young master, Lu Renjia shouted. However, Jun Xiaoyaro did not respond. In the next moment, the attacks of the 3 small saints were all directed at Jun Xiaoyaro. I thought you had some skills. It turns out that you are too scared to move, the 3 small saints said coldly. However, the sneers on their faces froze in the next moment. However, all the offensive spells disappeared like snow melting in spring when they got close to the figure. It was as if they had never existed. How is this possible? The 3 small saints' minds buzzed. Of course, they would never have thought that this was the legendary and extremely rare dharmic immunity. How can they call themselves the 8 small saints? Jun Xiaoyaro shook his head slightly. He couldn't be bothered to fight with these ants. He could use them as punching bags and test subjects to test the dharmic powers that he had obtained from signing in. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hands. A terrifying aura was brewing. Vast light surged in one of his hands, and demonic light gathered in the other. One of his hands controlled life, and the other controlled death. The power of life and death gathered in Zhang Xiaoyao's hands. It was the supreme dharmic wheel of life and death. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao was like a supreme divine king who controlled life and death. His aura shook the surroundings and shattered the stars. If I want you to live, you will live. If I want you to die, you will die. Zhang Xiaoyao first struck out with the vast light. The bodies of the three small saints were pulled toward Zhang Xiaoyao uncontrollably. Then, Zhang Xiaoyao struck out with the death light. The power to exterminate life burst out from his hands. It was as if it could destroy billions of lives. The three small saints roared angrily. They exerted all their dharmic powers and struggled desperately. We are here on the orders of the 10 princes of Jinwu to hunt down the remnants of the evil. How dare you attack us? Brother Nine-Headed Bug and the others won't let you go either. Sensing that they were about to die, the three small saints were terrified. They would never have thought that they would kick an iron plate one day. You are all trash. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes were cold and disdainful. He put his palms together. The power of life and death exploded in an instant. The bodies of the three small saints exploded at the same time. Then, they collapsed into 3 balls of flesh and blood. Even their primordial spirits were strangled. The wheel of life and death was so domineering. Chapter 602. The atmosphere outside Shongqiu Ancient Star seemed to have frozen over. Everyone was stunned as they looked at Zhang Xiaoyao. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable shock. Just a moment ago, there were 4 living experts. Now, one of them had exploded. The other 3 had turned into 3 lumps of flesh and blood. It was a nauseating sight. The heavenly wheel of death is indeed domineering. Not to mention the others, even Zhang Xiaoyao himself was surprised. The lethality of the heavenly wheel of death was too strong. It could directly crush the enemy's body, shatter their bones and organs, and turn them into a pile of flesh and blood. This was the power to control life and death with just one hand. Oh my God! Lu Renjia swallowed a mouthful of saliva. What kind of terrifying person had he befriended? Lu Renjia was glad that he had hugged the thickest thigh in the world. Blind thing. Zhang Xiaoyao looked indifferent as he waved his hand. The devouring god demonic art was unleashed. A pitch-black devouring vortex appeared and instantly refined the flesh and blood, turning it into the purest spiritual energy. Hiss, everyone who saw this scene subconsciously avoided it. Their expressions were filled with deep fear. That young man is shrouded in immortal light like a banished immortal. Yet, his technique is so strange and domineering. That's right. Is he the successor of some devil lord? Or is he the descendant of the devil path? The heavenly wheel of death and the devouring god demonic art were extremely domineering divine abilities. They had left a shadow in everyone's heart. Let's go. Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was calm, as if he had just done something insignificant. Whether it was the 8 small saints or the 10th prince, they were nothing in his eyes. Zhang Xiaoyao was not afraid of any threats or challenges. Lu Renjia nodded and followed closely behind Zhang Xiaoyao. He swore that he would hug this thigh tightly. At this moment, a timid and soft voice sounded from behind. Young master, please wait, Zhang Xiaoyao stopped and turned his head. He saw a little girl. She was the petite figure who was chased by the 4 small saints. The little girl looked to be around 12 or 13 years old. She was a cute little beauty. She had a head of resplendent silver hair that draped over her waist. Her large eyes sparkled like rubies, and her small nose was extremely delicate. The most eye-catching thing was that there were actually 2 fluffy snow-white rabbit ears in her silver hair. Moreover, they were drooping. Lop-eared rabbit. Zhang Xiaoyao tilted his head slightly. Lu Renjia, who was standing to the side, looked at him and asked in surprise, "Are you the Taiyin Jade Hair of the Moon God Palace?" The Heaven Fortune Pavilion that Lu Renjia was in was an intelligence organization in the mystic heaven immortal realm. They were familiar with the various factions in the mystic heaven immortal realm. This Taiyin Jade Hair. Lu Renjia had heard of it. She seemed to be the personal maid of the moon god Pallas's saintess. I'm Taiyin Jade Hair. Thank you for saving me. The Taiyin Jade Hair was very obedient. It lowered its rabbit ears and placed them on both sides of its head. She looked cute and innocent. With spiritual energy. It gave people a pitiful feeling. I didn't mean to save you. It's just that they were looking for death. Jun Xiaoyaro waved his hand. He didn't care. Whether it was a little girl or a 7-foot-tall man who was being chased, it didn't make any difference to him. Were the 4 little saints looking for death? Why did they have to provoke him? Hearing this, the Taiyin Jade Hair bit her lips and suddenly knelt down in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. She said in a sobbing voice, "Please, young master, please save my young lady." "Your young lady?" Jun Xiaoyao's expression was still calm. Lu Renjia explained, her young lady should be the saintess of the moon god palace, Yu Chanhuan. Previously, Lu Renjia had already told Jun Xiaoyaro about the mystic heaven immortal realm, including the attack of the moon god palace by the sun god mountain. My young lady is hiding from the 10 princes of Jinwu. The 4 little saints are chasing me because they want to know the whereabouts of my young lady, the Taiyin Jade Hair said. What does that have to do with me? Jun Xiaoyaro shook his head lightly. Although it was because of Yi Yu, Jun Xiaoyaro was destined to go against the sun god mountain. But this didn't mean he was going to save the saintess of the moon god palace. He was going to participate in the assembly of prodigies now. He didn't have the time to save her. Did he see Jun Xiaoyao's attitude? Taiyin Jade Hair's tears fell. She couldn't think of any other way. Lu Renjia didn't say anything. He listened to everything Jun Xiaoyaro said. However, when he thought about how Yu Chanhuan, a famous beauty in the mystic heaven immortal realm, was going to be ruined by the 10 princes of Jinwu, Lu Renjia sighed. Beautiful women were short-lived. Let's go. Jun Xiaoyaro ignored her. Taiyin Jade Hair bit her lip and continued, my young lady has the sacred body of Taiyin. The sacred body of Taiyin, the number 1 furnace body in the world. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows slightly. Mu Yuhan, whom he had met before, had a pure yin body, which was already a very good furnace body. However, compared to the sacred body of Taiyin, it was still a far cry. The sacred body of Taiyin was ranked in the top 50 of the 3,000 body types. It was the number 1 furnace body in the world. It could be said that almost all male cultivators dreamed of having a female cultivator with the sacred body of Taiyin as their Tao companion. That was the biggest dream of all male cultivators. It was not only because dual cultivation with the sacred body of Taiyin could greatly increase the speed of cultivation. It was also because female cultivators with such a body type had certain parts that were different from other female cultivators. They were rare treasures in the world. The kind that could make men ascend to heaven. That was why the sacred body of Taiyin was sought after by all male cultivators. However, such a body type was very rare. There might not even be 1 or 2 in the vast immortal realm. TSK, Yu Chanhuan is the goddess of the Shentian immortal realm. Lu Renjia also clicked his tongue and sighed. To be honest, he had also fantasized about Yu Chanhuan. However, a peerless beauty like Yu Chanhuan would never have anything to do with him. The sacred body of Taiyin is indeed not bad, but it's just SOSO. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was still calm. If it were other men, they might be very interested. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was different. With his cultivation talent, he did not need to use a furnace body to cultivate. Therefore, the sacred body of Taiyin was not very attractive to him. Taiyin Jade Hair was also stunned. This was the first time she had seen someone so indifferent to her young lady. Taiyin Jade Hair continued, if the 10 princes of Jinwu obtains my young lady, he might be able to cultivate the acquired chaotic body. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Lu Renjia. Lu Renjia said, although the 10th prince of the Sun God Mountain is the youngest son of the Golden Crow King, he is the most talented and has the sacred body of the sun. No wonder. Jun Xiaoyaro finally understood. Now he understood why the 10 princes of Jinwu wanted to kill Yu Chanhuan. The combination of the sacred body of Taiyin and the sacred body of Taiyin could indeed create the acquired chaotic body. Just like his sacred body of the ancients and Jiang Shengyi's innate Taoist embryo. If they really cultivated together, it was very likely that they would obtain the power of the innate Taoist embryo. Although the acquired chaotic body was not as good as the real innate chaotic divine body, it was still very powerful. I heard that part of the reason why the Sun God Mountain attacked the Moon God Palace was because the 10 princes of Jinwu wanted to get Yu Chanhuan and cultivate the acquired chaotic body, Lu Runjia said. Zhun Xiaoyaro fell into deep thought. To be honest, the acquired chaotic body was nothing. Even if the real innate chaotic divine body was in front of Zhun Xiaoyaro, he would not care. However, Zhun Xiaoyaro wanted Yi Yu to take revenge himself. After all, this was revenge for the extermination of his family. If Yi Yu did not take revenge himself, there would always be a barrier in his heart. It would become an existence like an inner demon, which was not good for his future. Taiyin Jade Hair seemed to have seen that Zhun Xiaoyaro was interested, so she continued. My young lady also has the Taiyin Mystical Sutra of the Moon God Palace. Oh! Zhun Xiaoyaro was really interested this time. Chapter 603. Immortal Sutras were extremely rare. Even some immortal orthodoxes might only have incomplete immortal sutras. Zhun Xiaoyaro didn't care about Yu Chanhuan, nor did he care about the Taiyin body. But he was indeed interested in the Taiyin Immortal Sutra. Zhun Xiaoyaro also had the 3 Lives Immortal Sutra, but it was incomplete. He only had the past Amitabha Sutra and the present world Tathagata Sutra. He was still missing the future Death Sutra. The 10 princes of Jinwu are chasing after my young miss. Other than wanting to obtain her, they also want to obtain the Taiyin Immortal Sutra. If they combine it with the Taiyin Immortal Sutra of the Sun God Mountain, they will have the supreme power of yin and yang, Taiyin Jade Hair said with a serious face. She had already said all the benefits she could say. If Zhun Xiaoyaro still wasn't tempted, there was nothing she could do. Are you sure your young miss will give it to me? Zhun Xiaoyaro said playfully. Things like immortal sutras were too precious. Probably, as long as young master can help young miss deal with the 10 princes of Jinwu. Taiyin Jade Hair stuck out her tongue and said. Forget it, it doesn't matter. There's nothing I can't get if I want it. Zhun Xiaoyaro didn't mind. Even if Yu Chanhuan didn't agree, he would just use force. Seeing that Zhun Xiaoyaro agreed, Taiyin Jade Hair patted her chest and heaved a sigh of relief. She had seen Zhun Xiaoyao's strength. He was definitely a taboo-level genius. Even if he couldn't defeat the 10 princes of Jinwu, he was more than enough to be Yu Chanhuan's helper. Young master, are you a genius on the forbidden list? Taiyin Jade Hair asked curiously. Forbidden list? Zhun Xiaoyaro still didn't know. Lu Runjia, the know-it-all, began to explain again. The entire ancient road had the giant list, the forbidden list, and the legendary emperor list. The giant list was the list of those geniuses. The 8 small saints of the far ancient royal family were all geniuses ranked at the top of the giant ranking. The forbidden list was a list of outlawed sky prides. Those who were listed on the forbidden list were all top-notch immortal descendants of various immortal domains. These descendants of the taboo realm had the potential to become quasi-emperors in the future. As for the monarch ranking, they were even rarer. Only geniuses who were truly qualified to become martial emperors were qualified to be listed on that list. However, the monarch ranking had yet to be activated. As a matter of fact, the monarch ranking had only been opened a few times since ancient times. The monarch ranking would only be activated during the era of great battles, when countless geniuses were born. After that, the Taiyin Jade Hair told Zhun Xiaoyaro everything. She had a crystal on her. If anything happened to Yu Chanhuan, she would contact her through messages. Then let's wait for her news. Zhun Xiaoyaro was not in a hurry. Taiyin Jade Hair was completely relieved. Her body swayed, and in an instant, she revealed her true form, which was a fluffy snow-white rabbit the size of a palm. Her big red eyes were as bright as red agates, and she looked extremely cute. The Taiyin Jade Hair jumped 3 feet high and landed on Zhun Xiaoyao's shoulder. Zhun Xiaoyaro took her in his hands and started stroking her. Taiyin Jade Hair. The Taiyin Jade Hair was trembling as she was stroked by the big brother. But later on, she felt that it was quite comfortable. The Taiyin Jade Hair narrowed her red eyes in enjoyment. Being stroked by a handsome brother was so comfortable. Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. While stroking the Taiyin jade hair. While bringing Lu Runjia to Shongqiu Ancient Star. Leaving behind a group of shocked onlookers. TSK, he killed 4 of the 8 small saints. The 9-headed bug and the others probably won't let this go. And that Taiyin jade hair? She seems to be the one that the 10 princes of Jinwu are going to encircle. Can that young man handle it? In all directions. There was a clamor of discussion. They had a premonition that an exciting battle would break out. Over here. Zhang Xiaoyaro had also arrived at Shongqiu Ancient Star. As a resting place in the early stages of the ancient road, Shongqiu Ancient Star was very prosperous. It was unlike the previous few stages, which were dead and lifeless. Zhang Xiaoyao's target was Shongqiu Sacred City. The holy city was huge and boundless, as if it was a giant continent. One could clearly see it from the universe. Countless people. They gathered at Shongqiu Sacred City. This was a resting place for the elites, and many of them were staying there. Zhang Xiaoyaro and the others. They landed in front of Shongqiu Sacred City. The entire sacred city. It was very magnificent. The city walls alone were 100 feet high. Elites from all walks of life. Riding ancient beasts and driving carriages, they came and went without stopping. Zhang Xiaoyao's arrival attracted the attention of many people. After all, Zhang Xiaoyaro was in the starry sky just now. The scene of the 4 minor saints being killed was just too shocking. However, Zhang Xiaoyao's body was shrouded in immortal light. Ordinary people couldn't see through him. It wasn't that Zhang Xiaoyaro deliberately kept a low profile, but he didn't want to be pointed at like a monkey wherever he went. Is that the mysterious elite who killed the 4 small saints? Who is he? I don't know. I can't see the origin of the art of life and death that he used. Other than the male cultivators who were discussing, there were also female cultivators whose eyes flashed. Although they couldn't see Zhang Xiaoyao's full face, they knew that he must be a peerless handsome man just by looking at his temperament. With good looks and strength, he would naturally attract the attention of female cultivators. Lu Runjia rubbed his hands and said, "Young master, there's still more than a month before the gathering of elites. Why don't you relax during this time?" "Sure." Zhang Xiaoyaro nodded. "Young master, why don't you go to the goddess lane?" Lu Runjia said with a wretched smile. The Taiyin jade hair in Zhang Xiaoyao's hand asked innocently, "What kind of place is that?" Lu Runjia winked and showed a smile that all men understood. "I didn't know there was such a place." Zhang Xiaoyaro was also surprised. He still had the time to go to the brothels when he was cultivating on the ancient road of ultimate. Of course. It's a normal need. Besides, a proper release can also relieve anxiety and stress, so that you can continue on your journey in a better state. Lu Runjia's words made sense. Zhang Xiaoyaro was speechless. An old pervert was an old pervert. Why did he have to make it sound so fresh and refined? By the way, I heard that in a few days, Fairy Yuan of the Goddess Lane will come. She is a peerless beauty who is famous on the ancient road of ultimate beauty. Lu Runjia said with yearning. And I heard that this time, she will choose a guest and talk to him through the night. Zhang Xiaoyaro nodded and didn't have much interest. He just wanted to exchange some treasures after the gathering of the elites and continue on his journey. A few days later, the entire Shongqiu sacred city was decorated with lanterns as if something big was about to happen. In a bustling place in the sacred city, there was a 100-story building that was brightly lit and extremely luxurious. This was the building of the Goddess Lane. As a famous brothel in the mystic region, there was a branch of the Goddess Lane even on the ancient road of ultimate beauty. Zhang Xiaoyaro stroked the Taiyin jade hair in his hand and followed Lu Runjia to this place. Young master, don't underestimate the Goddess Lane. It's not just a brothel. It's also a famous intelligence organization in the mystic region, much more powerful than the Tianji sect. Also, there are 7 beauties in the Goddess Lane. Fairy Yuan is the most beautiful of the 7, Lu Runjia said. You make it sound so high and mighty, but you're just there to accompany a guest, Zhang Xiaoyaro said lightly. Young master, you're wrong. The 7 beauties only show their talents. Their status is higher than many fairies and saintesses of the major sects. If they don't want to, others can't even get close to them, let alone touch them, Lu Runjia said. Zhang Xiaoyao didn't comment. He wasn't interested anyway. He just wanted to pass the time. Just as Zhang Xiaoyao entered the building, suddenly, there were exclamations from behind. It's Zi Tianxiao, the genius of the Purple Clan. Rumor has it that his eyes contain the purple divine light. It's a terrifying talent. The Taishu saint of the Taishu sacred ground is also here. He's one of the top geniuses on the giant list, close to the forbidden list. And Jian Wushuang of the Wuji sword sect is here too. That's Qin Zimo, the genius of the Qin clan of the ancients. He's here too. The arrival of the 4 famous geniuses made the entire goddess lane boil. They were all Fairy Yuan's admirers and were competing with each other. Especially the last one, Qin Zimo, who was from the Qin clan of the ancients. He was more noble than the other 3 geniuses. It seems that the little Tai Sui of the Qin clan didn't come. That little Tai Sui is on the forbidden list. He's already on his way. Some geniuses were discussing. Haha, I'm the only one who can chat with Fairy Yuan tonight, Zi Tianxiao of the Purple Clan said with a smile. His purple hair was loose and he was very handsome. There was a purple divine light flashing in his eyes. That was his talent. Zi Tianxiao, you still like to daydream, the Taishu saint said coldly. Then let's compete tonight to see who can win Fairy Yuan's favor, Jian Wushuang of the Wuji sword sect said. Ha! Qin Zimo of the Qin clan just smiled and didn't say anything. However, the other 3 geniuses looked serious as if they were facing a formidable enemy. In terms of status and background, Qin Zimo was the most powerful one here. He was the strongest competitor. Even the goddess Mill had to show some respect to the Qin family. They couldn't be disrespectful. Of course, that was if Zhang Xiaoyao wasn't included. After all, Zhang Xiaoyao's background was the most prestigious in the entire 9 Heavens Immortal Realm, let alone in the Huangtian Immortal Realm. Chapter 604. When the lanterns were lit, a group of geniuses gathered on the top floor of the building, waiting for the arrival of the main character. There were many beautiful maids in thin clothes who came to serve these geniuses. Some of the maids saw that Zhang Xiaoyao had an extraordinary temperament and wanted to come forward to serve him, but they were rejected by Zhang Xiaoyao. Lu Runjia, on the other hand, enjoyed the beauty of the maids massaging his shoulders. It seems that Qiangzi doesn't like these common women. Lu Runjia smiled. Zhang Xiaoyao didn't agree. His taste had been spoiled by Jiang Shengyi and the other women, and he was extremely picky. After all, with his status, there were very few women who were worthy of him. Even if they wanted to serve him, they had to see if they had the qualifications. Qin Zimo of the Qin family, Zi Tianxiao of the Purple Nine, the Taishu Holy Son of the Taishu Holy Land, and Jian Wushuang of the Wuji sword sect all sat at the front in the best seats. Zhang Xiaoyao's gaze ignored the other 3 and fell on Qin Zimo. The Qin clan, huh? The ancestor of the Qin clan, the Emperor, is rather famous, Zhang Xiaoyao mumbled. Although the Qin family wasn't a force in the Huangtian mystic realm, it was also very famous among the clan of the ancients. The emperor of the Qin family had suppressed an era, and his brilliance directly raised the status of the Qin family by a large margin. The status of the emperor of the Qin family was equivalent to the status of the heaven-abandoning great emperor in the Zhun family. Of course, compared to the Zhun family, the Qin family was still a little inferior and seemed a little inexperienced. After all, the Zhun family could compete with the Xian Ting for luck. As if sensing the gaze, Qin Zimo turned around and glanced at Zhang Xiaoyao sitting behind him. That person is the mysterious person who killed the 4 minor saints outside Maro Qiu, Qin Zimo thought to himself. However, Qin Zimo didn't care. He looked back as if he was sweeping a passerby. His goal today was to chat with Fairy Yuan through the night. Qin Zimo thought that he was in the bag. After all, the only ones present who could compete with him were Zi Tianxiao and the other 2. But their background and strength were not as good as his. At the thought of this, Qin Zimo's lips curled into a confident smile. As time passed, many of the Sky Prides present were getting impatient. Many of them had stayed on ancient mausoleum star for the sake of catching a glimpse of Fairy Yuan. Now, while everyone was waiting anxiously, a female voice that sounded like the sound of nature rang out, "This servant has kept everyone waiting." This voice was like the swaying of an immortal bell, instantly calming the anxiety in everyone's hearts. Coming, coming. All the prodigies present sat upright, afraid that they would make a fool of themselves in front of the fairy. A dome above a tall building? The door suddenly opened. Endless starlight sprinkled down. Amidst the sparkling and translucent starlight, a peerless fairy was like a fairy descending to the mortal world. It was a young girl with a life like that of a spiritual elephant. She was wearing a moon-white gauze dress. Under the illumination of the starlight, life was like a dream. Her fine black hair fluttered in the night breeze, and her facial features were exquisite. Eyebrows like jade feathers. Her skin was as white as snow, and her waist was as thin as about a yuan. Her teeth were as sharp as a shell. Her face was almost perfect, and there was not the slightest flaw. On a pair of slender and straight crystal-clear legs, she was wearing white stockings made of snow jade silk. White silk to her thighs, leaving a section of snow-white and tender thigh skin. That mysterious absolute domain. It seemed to be spying on people. It's actually white silk. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows. He really understood. Now he understood. Why was Fairy Yuan's reputation so great? After all, which man could resist the temptation of white silk? Lu Renjia, who was at the side, was stunned. His mouth was dry. He looked like a pig. Even Qin Zimo, Zi Tianxiao, and the other sky prides, although not to the extent of losing their composure, almost stopped breathing. Fairy Yuan's life was enough to suffocate people. "Thank you for coming for a while. This servant will first play a song." Fairy Yuan's voice was like large and small pearls falling on a jade plate. She waved her wrist lightly, took out a jade flute, and played it faintly. Below the Star King, a jade person playing the flute, the scene of death intoxicated all the sky prides present. Only Jun Xiaoyaro, whose fingers were tapping on the armrest, looked calm. Her aura. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep. He noticed that Fairy Yuan was a little different. After the song ended, the lingering sound lingered. Good, good, this song should only be in the sky. Fairy Yuan's song makes me forget to eat for 3 days. The sky prides present all praised, and their eyes flashed with amazement. At this moment, Fairy Yuan was covered in starlight, incomparably holy, like a fairy who had accidentally fallen to the mortal world, without the slightest hint of the mortal world. If she did not reveal her identity, no one would think that she was the top courtesan of the goddess Lane. Even those ancient fairies and holy maidens of the Holy Lands were not as elegant and pure as her. Fairy Yuan's eyes swept across everyone present. Every man who was swept by her felt their hearts go soft, as if they had been hit by something. Even Qin Zimo and the others were not spared from this. Then, Fairy Yuan's gaze met the figure sitting in the last row, covered in immortal light. Although separated by the immortal light mist. But Fairy Yuan could still vaguely see that pair of eyes that were as deep as the Star King. The other men looked at her, either with throbbing, greed, desire, or desire. And that gaze was calm without the slightest ripple, and no emotions could be seen from it. Fairy Yuan returned her gaze. "Ah, I'm dead." Lu Renjia's face was flushed, his breathing was rapid, and he was howling like a wolf. "My lady is already lucky enough. I didn't expect to see such a lucky person." The tie-in jade hair in Jun Xiaoyao's arms also spoke. "Not bad." Jun Xiaoyaro measured. Compared to Fairy Yuan's appearance, he was more interested in Fairy Yuan's origin. "Everyone, this servant will present a dance." Heavenly Maiden Yuan Liang said. The atmosphere in the lower area was even more lively. Everyone knew that compared to her voice and appearance, Fairy Yuan was actually better at dancing. Next, Fairy Yuan Ruoyue lowered her spirit and danced lightly. Her crystal-clear lotus arms stretched out, and her jade legs wrapped in white stockings were plump and delicate. And her slender waist was extremely flexible, like a snake or an elephant. Who knew how many poses she could pose? Fairy Yuan danced like a graceful swan, like a swimming dragon, like the goddess of Luo coming out of the water, peerless and unparalleled. This was Fairy Yuan's famous dance, the goddess of Luo's graceful dance. Not only is it a dance, but it's also a divine formula. Jun Xiaoyaro was surprised. This goddess of Luo's graceful dance was obviously not just for show. As Fairy Yuan danced, there were patterns flowing, and her magical power was like a waterfall entwined. Obviously, if this dance was used to attack, its lethality would be extremely great. It seems that this goddess Lane's top courtesan is not just a vase. Jun Xiaoyaro pondered. Fairy Yuan's dance was light and graceful, elegant and soft. There was a crystal-clear rain of flowers sprinkling down from the sky. Those were the patterns of law. There were also various spiritual birds and butterflies circling around. The scene was extraordinary. After the dance ended, all the prodigies present were still immersed in the artistic conception, unable to extricate themselves. Only Jun Xiaoyao's divine sense was clear from the beginning to the end, and he did not sink into it. Fairy Yuan's watery eyes fell on Jun Xiaoyao, and then she returned to normal. She smiled slightly, her cherry lips were pink, and her pearly white teeth were crystal clear. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I will choose a man to discuss the Dharma and discuss the path of cultivation together. Fairy Yuan's words undoubtedly made the men present breathe faster. Wasn't this the moment they were waiting for? One had to know that before this, Fairy Yuan had never been alone with a man. She couldn't even get close to him. And now there was a chance to be in the same room and talk all night. This was the best time to capture the heart of a beauty. However, many cultivators also knew their limits. With their strength and background, they were just here to join in the fun. Only Qin Zimo and the other three had the qualifications to be in the same room with Fairy Yuan. Zi Tianxiao, the prodigy of Purple 9, directly said, "I'm not talented, but I'm willing to discuss the path of cultivation with you. Zi Tianxiao, your own skills are not up to par. Don't mislead others." "Let me do it," the great Void Saint said. "None of you can do it." "Let me do it," the Wuji Sword Sect's Jian Wushuang said. The three of them were talking, and there was a strong smell of gunpowder. With a whoosh, Jian Wushuang's body shook, and a sword light flew toward Zi Tianxiao. Zi Tianxiao snorted coldly, and a purple divine light shot out of his eyes. The Great Void Saint also joined in the battle. The three of them were secretly competing with each other. At this moment, a voice sounded. "I wonder if I have the honor of discussing the path of cultivation with you?" The person who spoke was Qin Zimo. Hearing this, Zi Tianxiao and the others stopped fighting. It had to be said that Qin Zimo indeed had the most powerful background. Seeing several young elites fighting for her, Fairy Yuan's face is very calm. She subtly glanced at Jun Xiaoyao, who was sitting in the last row. However, she realized that Jun Xiaoyao had no intention of letting her speak. Fairy Maiden Yuan walked towards Qin Zimo with her fair legs. At this moment, even with Qin Zimo's history, his breathing stopped for a moment. Zi Tianxiao and the other prodigies sighed deeply when they saw this. They really did not have the courage to deal with Qin Zimo. Seeing Fairy Yuan walk in front of him, Qin Zimo was about to say something. However, he was shocked to find that Fairy Yuan had brushed past him. Finally, Fairy Yuan came in front of Jun Xiaoyao and smiled faintly. "I wonder if I have the honor of discussing the path of cultivation with Chongzi all night?" She emphasized the words all night. Chapter 605. Inside the tower, all the Sky Prides were stunned. They all felt that Heavenly Maiden Yuan would probably choose one of the four elites, including Qin Zimo. That was what Qin Zimo and the other three thought as well. They were even secretly competing with each other to see who was better. But in the end, Fairy Yuan chose the young man sitting in the last row who hadn't even opened his mouth. "It's the mysterious genius who killed the four minor saints in outer space," some people exclaimed when they saw Jun Xiaoyao. However, even if he had killed the four minor saints, he shouldn't have won Fairy Yuan's favor. Qin Zimo and the other geniuses didn't look too good. This kind of feeling was like a few men fighting over a girl, both openly and covertly, scheming against each other, and fighting until their heads were bruised and bleeding. In the end, the girl's heart already belonged to someone else. She fell in love with another man who didn't do anything. Who could stand it? Lu Renjia's adrenaline surged when he saw Fairy Yuan approaching. Even though Fairy Yuan wasn't here for him, Lu Renjia was so excited that he almost fainted when he saw Fairy Yuan at such a close distance. Some of the geniuses were surprised, some were dumbfounded, and some were jealous. Jun Xiaoyaro was the calmest person among the crowd. He glanced at Fairy Yuan's fair feet, voluptuous thighs, slender waist, and full breasts. Finally, his gaze landed on that pitilessly beautiful and exquisite face. Why? Jun Xiaoyaro asked calmly, tapping his fingers on the armrest of his seat. Do I need a reason? Fairy Yuan smiled. Of course, Jun Xiaoyaro said. A woman's intuition. Fairy Yuan blinked her watery eyes. This small expression added a hint of a girl's playfulness to her holy temperament. Jun Xiaoyaro remained silent. He had a feeling the girl already knew who he was. The Goddess Mill wasn't just a brothel. It was an intelligence organization with spies all over the Nine Heavens immortal realm. As the top courtesan of the Goddess Mill, it was reasonable for Fairy Yuan to know Jun Xiaoyao's identity. But Qin Zimo and the rest did not know. Who are you? You actually dared to hide your identity while attending Fairy's banquet. Could it be that you are disrespecting Fairy? Zi Tianxiao's eyes were filled with hostility. Fairy, I'm afraid it will be dangerous for you to be in the same room with someone of unknown origins like him, the Great Void Saint said coldly. Do you need me to check this person's strength? Jian Wudao of the Limitless Sword sect asked. As a disciple of a clan of the ancients, Qin Zimo's vision was much higher than the other three. He vaguely felt that this young man had some background. However, when he thought of Fairy Yuan, whom he had been pursuing for a long time, she actually gave that man a night in vain. Qin Zimo felt unhappy. He was very unhappy. He was extremely displeased. Who exactly are you? Why don't you reveal your appearance and report your background? Let you stay in the same room with the fairy? This Qin will also feel uneasy. Qin Zimo said indifferently. Jun Xiaoyaro was still sitting on the chair, motionless. When Qin Zimo saw this, his eyes darkened slightly as he said, Didn't you hear what I said? Are you teaching me how to do things? Jun Xiaoyaro tilted his head. I'm from the Qin family, a clan of the ancients. Qin Zimo puffed out his chest, his tone carrying a sense of superiority. Who do you think you are? What is the Qin family? Jun Xiaoyao's tone was indifferent. His words were like thunder, resounding through the entire place. If it was before, Fairy Yuan's choice of Jun Xiaoyaro had stunned everyone. But now, Jun Xiaoyao's words. Everyone was shocked. Was he really qualified to look down on the Qin family of the ancients? There were only a few people on the ancient road. Who exactly is this young man? Is he bragging or does he really have a background? Some cultivators were shocked and doubtful. This person is indeed arrogant. Let me try. Jian Wudao of the Limitless Sword sect. His body shook. A flash of sword light pierced straight toward Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro was still sitting calmly. The flash of sword light disappeared into nothingness. Indeed, this young man seems to have some kind of dharmic power immunity. He had shown it when he was facing the 4 minor saints, some elites said. Humph, pretentious. Jian Wudao was a little embarrassed. He had lost all his face in front of a beauty. He took out the long sword behind his back. It was a top-tier ancient sacred weapon that was almost at the level of a supreme weapon. The long sword pierced through the void with a sharp sword chi and fell toward Jun Xiaoyao. Just as the long sword was about to pierce through Jun Xiaoyao's glabella, Jun Xiaoyao stretched out 2 fingers and caught the blade of the long sword. Hiss, gasps could be heard from all around. Jian Wudao of the Limitless Sword sect was a famous elite. His name was on the list of giants. Jun Xiaoyao's wrist shook and the long sword shot out with an unparalleled force toward Jian Wudao. Oh no! Jian Wudao was shocked. He wanted to dodge, but it was too late. His body was pierced through by the long sword and nailed to the wall behind him. There was dead silence. Jian Wudao, who was on the list of giants, could not even take one blow from this mysterious young man. What was even more shocking was that no matter how hard Jian Wudao struggled, he could not pull out the sword and escape. This meant that the sword contained an extremely deep power of the Tao laws. This was not something that ordinary giants or elites could do. Qin Zimo and the other two were also shocked. On the other hand, Fairy Yuan's eyes were even brighter, as bright as the stars. Young master is indeed powerful. These words were extremely harsh to the ears of Qin Zimo and the others. It made them jealous. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes dimmed and a trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. Did this heavenly maiden Yuan want to use Qin Zimo and the others to test his cultivation strength? As expected, Qin Zimo and the other two looked at each other and then tacitly attacked together. They were in a competitive relationship before, but now, Zhun Xiaoyao's appearance made their competition a joke. How can any Tom, Dick, and Harry test me? Zhun Xiaoyao's expression was extremely cold. He was really tired of these flies. As he raised his hand, dharmic powers intertwined to form a giant palm. It was as if the sky was covering. As the Tao laws flowed, there was an unparalleled pressure. With Zhun Xiaoyao's current cultivation level, any casual move of his was comparable to the great abilities of other elites. After sensing that Zhun Xiaoyao was a saint at great perfection, Qin Zimo and the other two immediately lost all color on their faces, and their faces turned pale. Zhun Xiaoyao really wanted to slap them to death. Zi Tianxiao and the Great Void Saint resisted with all their might, but under this giant palm, they exploded into blood foam. They did not even have time to say anything. Although Qin Zimo was stronger than the other three, he was only slightly stronger. There was no qualitative change. Sensing that his physical body and essence spirit were about to collapse, Qin Zimo gritted his teeth and suddenly took out an incomplete ancient talisman. When this incomplete ancient talisman was taken out, Zhun Xiaoyao's originally lazy expression suddenly froze. That's the aura of the ancient Chaos Emperor talisman? Chapter 606. There was an ancient word engraved on the incomplete ancient talisman that Qin Zimo had taken out, and it flowed with a vast mysterious power. If it was the incomplete ancient talisman that Zhun Xiaoyao had obtained with the word chaos put together, it was the word ancient chaos. Boom. Zhun Xiaoyao's giant palm of laws directly pressed down on Qin Zimo's body. Qin Zimo's body almost instantly crumbled. However, under the protection of the incomplete ancient talisman, his substitute god still had a trace of life left. Hiss! What terrifying strength! Everyone was amazed by Zhun Xiaoyao's strength. They did not pay much attention to the incomplete ancient talisman. Zhun Xiaoyao raised his hand and activated the substitute god in his mind. His soul power turned into a giant hand and directly grabbed Qin Zimo's substitute god. Heavens! The soul has materialized. How powerful is this person's substitute god? Seeing the giant soul hand, the geniuses present were even more shocked. Zhun Xiaoyao had cultivated the chaotic divine grindstone visualization method since young. In addition, he had absorbed immortal ancient spirits and cultivated 2/3 of the 3 Lives Immortal Sutra. His soul power had long surpassed his peers and was not weaker than his physical body. At this moment, Qin Zimo's substitute god was trembling like a little white rabbit facing a ferocious tiger. He could feel that Zhun Xiaoyao's power of substitute god was vast and boundless, like the vast universe. Zhun Xiaoyao first took the incomplete ancient talisman and a look of disappointment appeared in his eyes. This was not the real incomplete ancient talisman, it was just an imitation. Where did this come from? Zhun Xiaoyao asked coldly. Qin Zimo's substitute god was trembling. He did not want to answer. Zhun Xiaoyao's brows furrowed. Vaguely, a millstone stained with the blood of a fiend god was about to crush Qin Zimo. Qin Zimo's substitute god trembled and felt a great sense of fear. He screamed, "This was given to me by my 9th brother, Qin Wuliang." Qin Wuliang is indeed the Qin family's little Tai Sui. Qin Wuliang is a genius on the forbidden list. He is also the son of God of the Qin clan. The heavenly talents in the lower regions looked fearful. The son of God of the Qin clan, Qin Wuliang, was also known as the Little Tai Sui. He was also a very famous outlawed skypride on the ancient Ultimate Road. Everyone believed that he was qualified to reach the end of the ancient path. Qin Wuliang. Zhun Xiaoyao muttered to himself. This domineering name was not much weaker than Long Ao Tian. Could it be that this Qin Wuliang also has a part of the inheritance of the ancient Chaos Emperor? The other half of the ancient Chaos Emperor talisman should be in his hands. Zhun Xiaoyaro pondered. He didn't expect that he would encounter his first leak on the ultimate ancient road so soon. Zhun Xiaoyaro looked at Qin Zimo indifferently. The coldness in his eyes was like the heavens. He regarded all living things as straw dogs. Did he sense that something was wrong? Qin Zimo's substitute trembled. No. You can't kill me. I'm a member of the Qin clan of the ancients. Brother Wuliang won't let this go. It's coming, it's coming. It's the standard cannon fodder's last words. Zhun Xiaoyaro shook his head slightly. Not a bit of creativity. Heavenly Maiden Yuan sighed in admiration. As expected of the son of God of the Zhun clan, who dares to compete with the heavens. I'm extremely impressed by your strength. The words fell. The entire place went silent. Only the words son of God of the Zhun clan reverberated in everyone's minds like a spell. Son of God of the Zhun clan. Lu Renjia said in a daze. Then, his eyes widened to the size of bronze bells. His mouth opened so wide that it could fit 10 eggs. Son of God of the Zhun clan, Lu Renjia jumped up as if his buttocks were on fire. The tie-in jade hair in Zhun Xiaoyao's arms? Her big ruby eyes also widened, and her 2 drooping rabbit ears stood up in shock. Qiongzi is actually the son of God of the Zhun clan today. Tai-in Jade Hair's face was shocked. Her small mouth opened. Her snow-white incisors were exposed. Even the people around Zhun Xiaoyaro, even this elephant was shocked, let alone the other geniuses. Everyone was a little confused. Ah! Why did you pinch me? I want to see. Am I dreaming? An anomaly who dares to compete with the heavens has actually appeared in front of me alive. This feeling, it was like a living god today, appeared in front of them. As for Qin Zimo's substitute, he was even more stunned. Then, he was terrified and almost collapsed. It was actually that person who couldn't be provoked. Qin Zimo wanted to cry but had no tears. Can you stop pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? Oh, no, Zhun Xiaoyaro had never pretended to be a pig. He had always been very good at suppressing power. It was just that Qin Zimo was blinded by jealousy and lost his mind, provoking someone he shouldn't have. As a result, he failed today. Zhun clan's son of God, I. Qin Zimo's voice trembled. Even his substitute was trembling. Comparing his background with Zhun Xiaoyaro, wasn't this showing off in front of an expert? Compared to the Zhun clan, his Qin clan had to stand aside, not to mention that Zhun Xiaoyao's background wasn't just the Zhun clan. Zhun Xiaoyao's expression was calm. He didn't hide his identity all the time. It was just that in the future, there would be less peace and more noise. Let Qin Wushuang come to me today. I, the son of God, want to see how much strength he can make me use. Zhun Xiaoyaro measured. He urged with the power of the substitute god. Qin Zimo didn't even have the chance to say anything before he was completely annihilated. In all directions, all the geniuses swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It was said that the Zhun clan's son of God had a boundless history. Now it seemed that it was true. The descendants of the clan of the ancients didn't even bat an eyelid when they said they would kill. Qiongzi, I didn't expect that I was blind. I didn't recognize the true dragon. Lu Renjia's voice trembled. He remembered that before, he had patted Zhun Xiaoyao's shoulder and asked him to call him Brother Lu. Lu Renjia just wanted to slap himself. Even if he wanted to court death, this was not the way to do it. Zhun Xiaoyaro smiled. He wasn't so narrow-minded. After the shock, Tai-in Jade Hair was even more pleasantly surprised. Previously, she only hoped that Zhun Xiaoyaro could help Yu Chanhuan deal with the 10 princes of Jinwu. Now it seemed that the 10 princes of Jinwu couldn't fight back in front of the Zhun clan's son of God. If it's the son of God, I'm willing to give him a massage every day. Tai-in Jade Hair thought to herself. In the blink of an eye, 3 geniuses were killed, and Jian Wushuang of the Wuji sword sect was nailed to the wall. When he thought about how he had actually used his sword against the legendary son of God of the Zhun clan, this famous genius actually fainted from fright. Lord Son of God, please follow me. Heavenly Maiden Yuan softly said. Although the geniuses present were heartbroken, to be honest, no one present was more qualified than Zhang Xiaoyao. In other words, it should be Heavenly Maiden Yuan's honor to be matched with Zhang Xiaoyao's status. Why do you think that this son of God would want to talk about numbers with you? Zhang Xiaoyao turned his head and asked indifferently. Heavenly Maiden Yuan's eyes moved, and she suddenly bent down and leaned close to Zhang Xiaoyao's ear. Zhang Xiaoyao smelled a fragrant wind. I also have a dance that I have never danced for outsiders. It's a special benefit. Lord Son of God, aren't you curious at all? Heavenly Maiden Yuan's breath was like orchids, ambiguous and provocative. Chapter 607. Goddess Yuan was good at dancing. Her graceful dance of the goddess of Luo could make all living things fall for her. She was still hiding something that no one else had seen. Curiosity killed the cat, Zhang Xiaoyao said meaningfully. Son of God, you're not a cat. You're a big tiger that everyone is afraid of, Goddess Yuan said with a smile. Am I, the son of God, that scary? Zhang Xiaoyao's face faded, revealing a godlike face. Even Goddess Yuan, who was as beautiful as she was stunned for a moment. To be honest, she had seen countless young masters of the remote antiquity families, saints of the sacred grounds, and peerless geniuses. In terms of appearance, no one could be compared with the young master in front of her. Even in terms of strength, there were not many people who could be compared with Zhang Xiaoyao. Then, Goddess Yuan blushed, which was rare. Then let's go, Zhang Xiaoyao said casually. He wasn't really interested in the benefits of the fairy maiden Yuan. Instead, he wanted to know what Goddess Yuan was up to. He also knew that this top courtesan of the goddess lane was not that simple. Master Son of God, please follow me. Goddess Yuan walked gracefully, preparing to take Zhang Xiaoyao to her private courtyard. Lu Renjia had just stood up when a maid came forward with a smile and said, Sorry, young master, the lady will only receive one person. Damn. Lu Renjia cursed. What about her? Lu Renjia looked at the tie-in jade hair in Zhang Xiaoyao's arms. That's a pet, the maid said with a smile. Damn. Lu Renjia continued to curse. In the end, under the gaze of Lu Renjia, the other geniuses, and Lu Renjia, Zhang Xiaoyao left the 100-story building and came to Goddess Yuan's private courtyard. Then, he went straight into her room. As soon as he entered the room, the smile on Zhang Xiaoyao's face disappeared. It was replaced by an extremely cold indifference. The temperature in the boudoir seemed to have dropped to the freezing point. Lord Son of God. Fairy Maiden Yuanshan frowned slightly. This Son of God isn't too happy. What should I do? Zhang Xiaoyao teased. Lord Son of God, what is the meaning of this? Fairy Maiden Yuan asked weakly. I don't like to be tested by others. Qin Zimo and the others will probably die without knowing that the fairy they yearn for the most would use them as chess pieces to test the waters. Zhang Xiaoyao revealed a cold smile. Fairy Maiden Yuan's expression was very calm. She was not too flustered. She bowed to Zhang Xiaoyao and said, My apologies. I was too curious and wanted to know more about the Son of God. Do you understand now? Zhang Xiaoyao asked calmly. Fairy Maiden Yuan bit her jade lips and said softly, I understand. Lord Son of God is not only very long, but also very hard. Not everyone is qualified to test him. Zhang Xiaoyao took a seat on an armchair right away. A sweet smile appeared on Heavenly Maiden Yuan's pitilessly beautiful face. In that case, I am willing to apologize with a dance and ask for Lord Son of God's forgiveness. As she spoke, Fairy Maiden Yuan stretched her arms and limbs again and danced like a butterfly. Her dance was graceful and moving. Her waist was as flexible as a snake. There were thousands of postures. This dance was also beautiful and pleasing to the eye. But it did not seem to be much different from the previous performance. But next, there was a change. Because she was dancing, Fairy Maiden Yuan's clothes were getting fewer and fewer. I see. Zhang Xiaoyao suddenly understood. Was this the so-called benefit? Then, he reached out and covered Tai-Yin Jade Hair's big eyes. Young master, I want to see too. Tai-Yin Jade Hair's furry claws scratched Zhang Xiaoyao's palm. A little rabbit is not suitable to watch, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Fairy Maiden Yuan still had a bottom line. She still had her underwear and white stockings woven from snow jade silk that had not been taken off. Fairy Maiden Yuan's last dance? She stretched out her beautiful legs and pointed at Jun Xiaoyao's chest. Her jade feet looked soft and boneless under the silk stockings. It was extremely gentle and beautiful. Her eyes were watery as she bit her red lips and said, "Lord Son of God, can you help me take it off?" Jun Xiaoyaro supported his chin with his arm and said indifferently, "Don't you have hands?" When Fairy Maiden Yuan heard this, a hint of surprise flashed across her beautiful eyes. Was he really a straight man? Fairy Maiden Yuan pouted coquettishly, glanced at Jun Xiaoyaro, and retracted her leg. Then everything was over. That's it. Jun Xiaoyao's interest waned. What else? Fairy Maiden Yuan said. Just tell me the purpose of your visit. You specially organized this banquet for me, the Son of God. I'm afraid it's not just for me to enjoy this dance, right? Jun Xiaoyao's words made Fairy Maiden Yuan's eyes flash secretly. It seemed that Jun Xiaoyaro already knew the purpose of this banquet. She said that she wanted to invite a group of prodigies. But in fact, she just wanted to invite Jun Xiaoyaro alone. From the beginning to the end, Fairy Maiden Yuan's target was only Jun Xiaoyaro. Qin Zimo and the other prodigies were just tools to fill the stage. If they knew this in the netherworld, how would they feel now? Then I'll just tell you the purpose of my visit. Lord Son of God, have you heard of the Temple of Doom? Where is that? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. It's located at the 23rd level of the Ancient Road, the Heavenly Underworld Ancient Planet. The Heavenly Underworld Ancient Planet is the territory of the Noggers. The most powerful person in the Noggers is a sacred Lord Overlord, called Queen Medusa. Of course, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that the Temple of Doom may open in a few years. Fairy Maiden Yuan's words made Jun Xiaoyaro fall into deep thought. It was normal for the Goddess Bar's intelligence network to find out this news. What's in the Temple of Doom? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. It's said that it's related to the mythical emperors and may even be related to immortals, Fairy Maiden Yuan said. Jun Xiaoyaro pondered. The so-called mythical emperors were ancient emperors who had almost become mythical beings. For example, the one-armed Lord of Hell, the true Lord of Gulen, the god of the sea and so on had almost become gods worshipped by people. It was said that those mythical emperors were only one step away from becoming real immortals. But in the ancient times, those mythical emperors didn't appear in the world, so no one knew if they still existed or where they had gone. Why me? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Because Lord Son of God dares to compete with the heavens. You're the most powerful forbidden existence on the ancient road, Fairy Maiden Yuan said with a smile. Haha, I'm cursed by the heavens and can't become a Taoist. I'm flattered that the top courtesan of the Goddess Bar thinks so highly of me. Jun Xiaoyaro said with a half-smile. Lord Son of God, you don't have to be so humble, Fairy Maiden Yuan said. Tell me the truth, Jun Xiaoyaro said coldly, not bothering to put on an act. Fairy Maiden Yuan said, to be honest, the Temple of Doom is very strange. It's full of curses. Although it's not listed in the 7 incredible places, it's not far from it. Lord Son of God has entered the Bronze Immortal Palace and the 19th floor of the Infernal Star and came out safely. Such a dangerous place shouldn't be a threat to Lord Son of God. Besides, Lord Son of God has the sacred body of the ancients and is immune to all kinds of strange curses. It's the perfect place to go to the Temple of Doom, Fairy Maiden Yuan said. So, Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Fairy Maiden Yuan and said, Are you treating me, the Son of God, as a tool? Chapter 608. I wouldn't dare, Fairy Yuan hurriedly defended herself. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and did not say anything. In the face of absolute power, any schemes would pale in comparison. When the time came, it was hard to say who would be the one using whom. Although Fairy Yuan had hidden her intentions well, Jun Xiaoyaro did not care. She was just a woman. How could she escape from his grasp? Master Son of God, you seem to have misunderstood me. In fact, The reason why I'm interested in the opportunity of fortune at the Temple of Doom is because the goddess Lane will be choosing the next owner soon. We, the 7 goddesses, are all candidates. The others will also try to find allies. I don't care about the others, but there's one person who's an Archean royalty, the noble lady of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. She's my biggest competitor. She might try to rope in outlawed Skyprides to help her. Fairy Yuan said frankly. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded. To put it simply, Fairy Yuan wanted to seize the opportunity of fortune at the Temple of Doom and transform her cultivation base so that she could become the next owner of the Goddess Lane. The noble lady of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, who was also one of the 7 goddesses, was her biggest competitor. To play it safe, Fairy Yuan had her eyes on him. What's in it for me to help you? Jun Xiaoyaro asked lazily. One would not do anything without benefits. Jun Xiaoyaro had always been lazy to do things that did not benefit him. Is it a benefit to be able to win my heart? Fairy Yuan asked with a sweet smile. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows. She was indeed the top courtesan of the Goddess Lane. Although she was extremely pure, she was quite good at flirting with men. What if I don't want to? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Then my door will still be open for you, Master Son of God. Fairy Yuan's eyes sparkled like stars. Which door? The one below? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Fairy Yuan was stunned for a moment before she understood what he meant. Her snowy cheeks blushed. There was a hint of anger in her sparkling eyes. When experts fought, every move was fatal. Let's see who can flirt better. After everything was explained, Jun Xiaoyaro agreed to go to the Temple of Doom with Fairy Yuan. Jun Xiaoyaro himself was also very interested in the Temple of Doom. That was related to mythical emperors and immortals, so it was worth exploring. As for Fairy Yuan, Jun Xiaoyaro knew that she was hiding many secrets. However, with Jun Xiaoyao's strength, he didn't need to care about this at all. The strong could disregard all schemes. Sir Son of God, why are you so wary of me? I'm willing to drink 3 cups as punishment. Fairy Yuan took out a cup and drank 3 cups. After drinking the wine, Fairy Maiden Yuan's exquisite face became even more beautiful. In addition, she wasn't wearing much, so it was very irresistible. Jun Xiaoyao's expression remained indifferent. After that, the two of them began to discuss the Tao. What surprised Jun Xiaoyaro was Fairy Maiden Yuan's understanding of cultivation. It was very profound. Or even the airs of some undying powers. They weren't as profound as her. Jun Xiaoyaro felt that Fairy Maiden Yuan had a lot of background. Of course, Jun Xiaoyao's opinion. It also shocked Fairy Maiden Yuan. Her eyes flashed. Jun Xiaoyao's understanding of cultivation? It wasn't much worse than some old antiques and living fossils. I thought. I have some understanding of cultivation, but I didn't know that there's always someone better. There's always someone better. Sir Son of God, you're really amazing. Fairy Yuan sighed. She said that they would only discuss the Tao for one night. But after one night, Fairy Yuan didn't ask Jun Xiaoyaro to leave. Instead, she begged him to stay. There was still more than a month before the business alliance of 10,000 clans prodigy gathering. Jun Xiaoyaro had nothing to do, so he decided to stay for the time being. The news of Jun Xiaoyao's appearance in Shanqi Sacred City gradually spread. What about the ancient road of ultimate? Who was the most eye-catching prodigy? Without a doubt, it was Jun Xiaoyao. This was a ruthless character who dared to compete with the will of the immortal region. Everyone was looking forward to it. The battle between Jun Xiaoyaro and the 7 defiant emperors. TSK. The Son of God of the Jun family stayed in Fairy Yuan's residence for one night and didn't come out. I knew it. Even if she's high and mighty, even a holy fairy like her can't avoid the Son of God of the Jun family. She'll be dissatisfied. What? Are you jealous? If it were any other man, I'd definitely be jealous. But if it's the Son of God of the Jun family, I don't dare to feel anything other than admiration. Many prodigies were lamenting. If it were any other prodigy who could win Fairy Yuan's favor, they would definitely be jealous. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, made it impossible for anyone to even feel jealous of him. Because his strength and identity were too extraordinary, he gave people the feeling that Fairy Yuan was the one who was superior. Sir, you can't forget little Lu even if you have a beauty. Lu Renjia was very sad. While Zhun Xiaoyaro was in the arms of a woman, he could only stand outside the door and let the cold icy rain slap his face. At this moment, in another part of the starry sky not far from Shanqi Ancient Star, 4 figures were breaking through the void and heading toward Shanqi Ancient Star. Big brother, I didn't expect the one who killed Xiong Batian and the others to be the legendary son of God of the Zhun family. Among the 4, a man with a rough body with a green manner said in a deep voice. He was one of the 8 small saints of the far ancient imperial family, the Azure Lion Spirit of Lion Camel Ridge. The 8 small saints had dominated the ancient road of ultimate. Even outlawed Skyprides had to show them some respect. But now, 4 of them were killed on Shanqi Ancient Star. They were furious at first and were heading straight to Shanqi Ancient Star to seek justice for their brothers. But halfway there, they heard that the one who killed their brothers was the legendary son of God of the Zhun family. For a moment, even the arrogant 8 small saints were hesitant. Among the 4, the leader was a grey-haired man. The murderous aura around him seemed to have condensed into 9 ferocious heads. Among those heads, some were shaped like dragons, some like pythons, and some like birds. It was a terrifying sight to behold. This was the leader of the 8 small saints of the far ancient royal family, the 9-headed bug. Rumor had it that the 9-headed bug possessed the bloodline of the far ancient 9 phoenix and far ancient 9 snakelet. His true strength was not much weaker than outlawed Skyprides. This was one of the reasons why the 8 small saints could be so arrogant. So what if he's the Zhun family's son of God? He's just an existence that has been abandoned by the heavenly axiom. Don't be fooled by his glory now. He'll eventually fall if he can't prove himself. The others were wary of Zhun Xiaoyaro, but the 9-headed bug was not. His strength was close to outlawed Skyprides. He might not be able to defeat Zhun Xiaoyaro, but he could easily retreat. After all, his strength was far beyond that of Xiong Batian and the other small saints. That's right. The Zhun family's son of God ruined the 10 princes of Jinwu's plan by saving the Taiyin jade hair. He's destined to get into trouble. Another far ancient royal Skypride said. He was a Skypride of the Crimson Tiger Shark clan. Let's go. Let's see just how strong this legendary divergent is. The 9-headed bug sneered. The 4 small saints flew toward the Shanqi Ancient Star. A month passed in the blink of an eye. The Shanqi Holy City became even more lively. The business alliance of 10,000 clans Skypride Assembly was about to begin. All kinds of rare treasures from the Emperor Road would be put up for auction. However, there was another matter that caught everyone's attention. Zhun Xiaoyaro had not left the fairy maiden Yuan's private courtyard for more than a month. This made many people's imaginations run wild. It's been a month. My goodness, the Zhun family's son of God's combat strength is too strong. I heard that the kidney of the sacred body of the ancients is different from that of ordinary people. It's so vigorous that it can have sex with 3,000 women in a night. Is it really that vigorous? If only I had the sacred body of the ancients. Sigh, speaking of which, I heard that the sacred body of the ancients' blood essence will be auctioned at this assembly of Skyprides. What? Where did the sacred body of the ancients' blood essence come from? I don't know. Rumor has it that someone brought it from the depths of the ancient road. It's probably the work of the sacred body's archenemy. TSK. If the Zhun family's son of God knew that someone was auctioning the sacred body of the ancients' blood essence, I wonder what his reaction would be. Chapter 609. The Assembly of Geniuses of the Business Alliance of 10,000 Clans would have all kinds of strange treasures to be auctioned. However, no one expected that there would be something like the blood essence of the sacred body of the ancients. It was simply a provocation to the son of God of the Zhun family. There were also some who thought that it was an old enemy of the sacred Physique lineage who had issued a challenge to Zhun Xiaoyaro. Some cultivators who were vaguely aware also knew that there had been many shocking battles of the strongest physiques on the ancient road. In the past battles, the sacred body branch didn't really seem to have the upper hand. The enemy of the sacred body branch was very terrifying and had an unparalleled appearance. I heard that the blood essence of the sacred body seems to be related to the desolate sacred palace in the depths of the ancient road. The desolate sacred palace? That branch that has long been desolate. Many cultivators were whispering to each other, talking about the branch that had long been desolated. At this moment, in the courtyard where Fairy Yuan was, two figures stepped out leisurely. It was Jun Xiaoyao and Fairy Yuan. Jun Xiaoyao was stroking the Tai-yin jade hair in his hand with a calm expression. On the other hand, Fairy Yuan's face was red and her eyes were watery like autumn water. It was easy to misunderstand and daydream that she had been moistened by rain and dew. The reason why Fairy Yuan was like this was naturally because of the more than a month of discussion. Her cultivation had increased by a small level again. It was very rare in the Saint realm. Listening to you is better than studying for 10 years. Lord Son of God is really my lucky star. Fairy Yuan's delicate body was close to Jun Xiaoyao, and her eyes were like silk as she said happily. At this moment, she looked like a naive and happy little girl without any tricks. She was very pure. That's because you have talent. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent. He didn't expect Fairy Yuan to be so talented that she could break through with just a little help. Of course, Jun Xiaoyao also had his own gains. He only needed to accumulate a little more to condense new divine qi. Master, you finally came out. The assembly of geniuses is about to begin. Lu Renjia, the fat man, rushed up immediately. Seeing Fairy Yuan's charming and satisfied eyes, Lu Renjia looked at Jun Xiaoyao with admiration. He cupped his hands and said, Lord Son of God is really amazing. It has been more than a month. Hearing that, Jun Xiaoyao was stunned. Why did it feel like there was another meaning? In the past month or so, Jun Xiaoyao had been doing nothing but sparring sessions. It was just a bath. At most, he would let Fairy Maiden Yuan massage his shoulders and back. Nothing else happened. Jun Xiaoyao? He was still very principled. Oh, young master, I have something to tell you. Lu Renjia seemed to have thought of something. He told Jun Xiaoyao about the sacred body of the ancients. Oh, is that so? Jun Xiaoyao's expression turned cold. What if he guessed correctly? Ye of heavens, God of the heavens. It was a provocation to him. It was also a challenge. Right at this moment, the sound of a bell rang out. The assembly of geniuses of the business alliance of 10,000 clans had begun. Go! Let's go and have a look. Jun Xiaoyao flung his sleeves. His expression was cold. The business alliance of 10,000 clans was a huge merchant force. They were all over the 9 heavens immortal realm. Why was it called the alliance of 10,000 clans? It was because there were creatures of various races in the business alliance. Humans, monsters, Archean royalty and so on. The business alliance of 10,000 clans had always maintained a neutral attitude and treated all races equally. It was because of this that their business was so big. They even had a station on the ultimate ancient road. Above Shanqi Sacred City, there was an exquisite and gorgeous palace. It was floating in the void. The palace was luxurious and gorgeous. It was made of rare talisman bone true gold. It was obvious that the business alliance of 10,000 clans had a very deep foundation. Geniuses of all races gathered there from all directions. Hey, that's Lei Zhen, the young master of the Thunderquake sect. Rumor has it that when he was born, thunder gathered between his eyebrows and turned into an inextinguishable thunder talisman. Some of the geniuses exclaimed when they saw a young man riding a Thunder Draco horse with lightning surrounding him. That was a rather famous genius from the ultimate ancient road. He cultivated the Tao of lightning. That's Qian Duozai, the young master of the Celestial Treasure sect. Another fat man in a golden robe who was comparable in size to Lu Renjia attracted everyone's attention. Qian Duozai was sitting on a carriage made of rare metals. 9 pure-blooded white dragon horses pulled the carriage. His 10 fingers were full of interspatial rings. Qian Duozai, the young master of the Celestial Treasure sect, is famous for his wealth. Rumor has it that even the descendants of some immortal forces don't have as much wealth as him. Many geniuses looked at Chen Duozai with burning eyes. "That young master is so handsome," some female cultivators exclaimed. "That's not handsome. That's Chen Duozai," some male cultivators complained. But with Chen Duozai around, it'll be difficult for the other geniuses to get treasures. Some people shook their heads. In fact, the descendants of the immortal forces might not be as rich as Chen Duozai. That was because the divine source and immortal essence and other resources were all used for cultivation. In a place like the business alliance of 10,000 clans, money was the hard currency. All other identities and backgrounds had to be put aside. At this moment, the surrounding male cultivators suddenly cried out in alarm. In the void, a rain of flowers fell, and a man and a woman appeared. It was the woman who made the male cultivators exclaim. It was a woman dressed in a bright red robe. Even though she was wearing a loose dress, it was unable to conceal her domineering figure. Her exquisite devilish curves attracted the gazes of the surrounding people like magnets. That woman's appearance was also beautiful and alluring. She was as alluring as a fairy. The most eye-catching thing was that she had 9 furry foxtails behind her. This clearly showed her identity. She's Hu Qingqing, the noble daughter of the 9-tailed fox clan. She's also one of the 7 goddesses. She's a strong competitor for the next owner of the goddess lane. I heard that she's also Fairy Yuan's biggest rival. But why do I feel that Hu Qingqing doesn't look so good? Isn't that obvious? Fairy Yuan has roped in the son of God of the Jun family as a powerful ally. Hu Qingqing is probably going to have a headache. The truth was just as everyone had guessed. Hu Qingqing was indeed in a bad mood. Damn it, Fairy Yuan has already established a relationship with the son of God of the Jun family. This is going to be troublesome. Hu Qingqing bit her red lips. In terms of appearance, figure, and skills, I'm no worse than that woman. No, I have to scheme. Hu Qingqing thought to herself. The man beside her heard Hu Qingqing's muttering and said, "Don't worry, noble daughter. My master may not be weaker than the son of God of the Jun family." In fact, before Fairy Yuan roped in Jun Xiaoyao, Hu Qingqing had already chosen an ally. An absolutely powerful ally. Logically speaking, with this ally, Hu Qingqing was absolutely confident that she could completely suppress Fairy Yuan in the Temple of Doom's opportunity. But Fairy Yuan had roped in Jun Xiaoyao. This was something that Hu Qingqing didn't expect and caught her off guard. Chapter 610. I don't mean to belittle your master. It's just that the son of God of the Jun family is no ordinary person. Hu Qingqing wasn't a fool to be able to compete with Fairy Yuan. She knew who she could mess with and who she couldn't. Jun Xiaoyao was the one who couldn't be messed with. No matter what his future was like, at least now on the ancient road of ultimate, there were only a handful of people who were qualified to mess with Jun Xiaoyao. Heh. I think you're overestimating the son of God of the Jun family. He's cursed by the heavenly Tao and is destined to be unable to prove his Tao. It won't be long before he vanishes into the crowd. And my master is a natural saint spirit. He's destined to be on par with the great emperors and fight with the ancient emperors. This young man's words were filled with fanatical worship for his master. That kind of worship was like the worship of Jun Xiaoyao by the sequence of the Jun family. It had become a religion. I know your master's strength, but... Hu Qingqing sighed slightly. The master that the young man spoke of was definitely powerful. He was one of the taboos of the ancient road of ultimate. But now, that taboos had other things to do and didn't come to Shongqiu Ancient Star. Instead, he sent his servant to contact them. With this ally, Hu Qingqing was full of confidence. But halfway through, someone came out of the blue. Forget it. Let's go in first. We must get that thing today. It might be helpful in breaking into the Temple of Doom. Hu Qingqing was determined to get it. In the Temple of Doom, there were things related to the myth emperors and even immortals. If she could get the opportunity in it, she would surpass Fairy Yuan and become the next owner of the Goddess Mill. It was almost a certainty. The group of geniuses entered the palace. The palace was vast and could accommodate 100,000 creatures. The geniuses with the highest status, such as Hu Qingqing, the young master of the Celestial Treasure Sect, and the young master of the thunder-shocking sect, all sat in the first row. An old man from the Chamber of Commerce of the myriad tribes came up to the stage to host. His cultivation had reached the Saint King realm, which was enough to control the scene. Just as the atmosphere was getting lively, a calm and gentle voice sounded from outside. As expected of the Chamber of Commerce of the myriad tribes trade fair. It's quite lively. He's here, he's here. The main character is here. Upon hearing this voice, everyone's gazes simultaneously turned to look at the source of the voice. 3 figures. He walked over slowly. Jun Xiaoyaro was stroking the Tai-yin jade hair in his arms, while Fairy Kite was leaning against Jun Xiaoyaro. He had an obedient look on his face. Lu Renjia walked on the other side with a big belly. With a face full of complacency and pride. He looked like a fox pretending to be a tiger. After all, with his status. When had he ever enjoyed the attention of so many people? Only by Jun Xiaoyao's side. Only then would he be able to bask in the limelight. Seeing Fairy Yuan acting like a little wife, the hearts of countless male cultivators were broken. A goddess that they could only dream of. However, she ended up sticking to Jun Xiaoyaro for nothing. Perhaps this was life. Is that the son of God of the Jun family? Hu Qingqing's gaze immediately fell on Jun Xiaoyaro. Her beautiful eyes instantly lit up. Really? Although she had heard countless stories about Jun Xiaoyaro, when she saw him with her own eyes, she was still amazed. But Fairy Kite next to him? She was extremely dazzling. Hu Qingqing rolled her eyes, got up directly, swayed her slender waist, and walked toward Jun Xiaoyaro. This is the famous son of God of the Jun family. Seeing you in person is indeed a godlike figure, Hu Qingqing said with a charming smile. Jun Xiaoyaro looked calm. When he saw the 9 tails behind Hu Qingqing's butt, he knew her identity. She was the noble daughter of the 9-tailed fox clan. This reminded Jun Xiaoyaro of Bai Mai the Heavenly Fox clan's Heavenly Fox clan. The Fox clan was an Archean royal clan, and the 9-tailed fox clan was the real Archean royalty. Hu Qingqing, why is the ally you chose not here? Fairy Kite took a step forward and stood in front of Jun Xiaoyaro like a hen protecting its food. It was not easy for her to win over Jun Xiaoyaro. Naturally, she would not give Hu Qingqing a chance to take advantage of the situation. He, what's wrong? Is the son of God yours alone? Can't others talk to him? Hu Qingqing's eyes fell on Jun Xiaoyaro and smiled charmingly. Lord Son of God, what do you like about Fairy Kite? Appearance, figure, or skills? I have all these, and I'm better than her. It had to be said that the 9-tailed fox clan was born to be seductive. Hu Qingqing's every frown, every smile, every word, and every action were charming. Coupled with her devilish curvy figure, she was indeed an irresistible stunner. Her temperament was truly in line with the temperament of the top courtesan of the goddess Lane. On the other hand, Fairy Kite was more like a fairy who had accidentally fallen into the mortal world. Fairy Kite, do you smell something? Jun Xiaoyaro suddenly asked. What smell? Fairy Kite's eyes rippled. It's the smell of a fox, Jun Xiaoyaro said coldly. Hu Qingqing's face froze and was dyed red with embarrassment. Then, she was too ashamed to show her face. She was second only to Fairy Kite among the 7 goddesses. Countless men had fallen for her. But now, Jun Xiaoyaro had ridiculed her, which made her feel extremely ashamed. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were cold. Although he was still a virgin, he knew a little about women. A woman like Fairy Kite was cold and pure in the mortal world. She would not talk to any man and would not get close to him. Only in front of Jun Xiaoyaro would she put down her pride and become a real ordinary woman. As for Hu Qingqing, as long as she was a Sky Pride powerhouse, she would treat them with such a charming smile. This kind of woman would make him unhappy if she got close to him, let alone tainting his precious body. Jun Xiaoyao's words made Fairy Kite's eyes light up with joy. While Jun Xiaoyaro still kept his guard up around her, his attitude toward her was different from how he treated an outsider. Seeing Hu Qingqing being ridiculed like this, the young man sitting in the front row suddenly stood up and said coldly, Son of God of the Jun family, watch your words. Noble lady Hu Qingqing is my master's ally. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows. Before he could say anything, Lu Renjia scolded, "Are you teaching my young master how to behave? Also, don't drag your master into this. H. My young master is the young sacred spirit of the Holy Spirit Island, Mo Jinyu." The young man's tone was filled with respect. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. What? It's the outlawed sky pride of the Holy Spirit Island, Mo Jinyu. The Holy Spirit Island only has a few successors in each generation, and Mo Jinyu is the best among them. His original form is the Nine Orifices rock spirit, and rumor has it that he has the potential to become a full-fledged sacred spirit. A full-fledged sacred spirit was an existence that was comparable to the great emperors and ancient emperors. Mo Jinyu was able to obtain the title of young sacred spirit, which was enough to show that his talent was unparalleled. He was definitely one of the strongest taboos on the ancient road of ultimate. Hearing the young man's words, Lu Renjia's throat choked. His expression was unnatural, and he could not speak. Obviously, he had heard of the young sacred spirit of the Holy Spirit Island. He was indeed an existence that was famous on the ancient road. The sacred spirit race was nourished by heaven and earth, and watered by the sun and the moon. To a certain extent, it could be said that they were born from heaven and earth. This kind of living being was favored by the heavenly axiom. They were almost invincible in the same realm. Many people were curious to see what would happen if a sacred spirit that was invincible in the same realm collided with an invincible sacred body of the ancients. Chapter 6:11. Oh! A young sacred spirit from the Sacred Spirit Island? Jun Xiaoyaro murmured to himself. Jun Xiaoyaro had heard of the Sacred Spirit Island before. It was an immortal force made up of the sacred spirit race. This force was very strange. It wasn't based in any deity realm, but on a floating sacred spirit island. There were very few members of this immortal force, but every one of them was invincible among their peers. Otherwise, why else would it be said that the Holy Spirit race was born and nurtured by the heavens? Of course, in Jun Xiaoyao's opinion, it was just that. The other immortal forces might be afraid of the Sacred Spirit Island. But Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't afraid. No matter how strong the Sacred Spirit Island was, its members were few. Although it was famous, it couldn't do anything. On the other hand, the Jun family not only had many overlords, but also a lot of them. Just the ancestral patriarchs alone were ranked from the 1st to the 18th. And this didn't include the hidden heritage of the Jun family. In short, the Sacred Spirit Island was very strong, but it wasn't qualified to make Jun Xiaoyaro afraid. On the side, Fairy Yuan secretly glanced at Jun Xiaoyaro. She was also a little worried that Jun Xiaoyaro would be afraid of the young sacred spirit Mo Jinyu, which would affect the alliance with her. However, what made Fairy Yuan relieved was that Jun Xiaoyao's expression didn't change at all because of the Sacred Spirit Island and Mo Jinyu. Mo Jinyu of the Sacred Spirit Island, his true form is. Jun Xiaoyaro said. Young master, Mo Jinyu's true form is a 9-orifice stone spirit. He was born with 9 orifices and absorbs the essence of heaven and earth, as well as the essence of the sun and the moon. He's really not weak. Lu Renjia was a know-it-all, so he knew this kind of information. Although he also wanted to belittle Mo Jinyu, he really couldn't find the point. This young sacred spirit was indeed very strong. He was recognized as an existence on the forbidden list that couldn't be provoked. Hearing Lu Renjia's words, the young man's lips curled into a proud smile. He felt proud of Lu Renjia. He believed that even the son of God of the Jun family would be afraid of his master. After Jun Xiaoyaro heard this, he nodded slightly and said slowly, 9-hold rock spirit, very good. My myriad chi cauldron has refined a Gungjin rock spirit before. If it devours another 9-hold rock spirit, it will be good. Once these words were spoken, not to mention that everyone present was astonished. Was he Elder Wang, the saint of the business alliance of 10,000 races who presided over the trade fair? His old face was stunned and he was a little stunned. The young holy spirit, Mo Jinyu, was a prodigy at the great circle of the sage realm. Even if it was him, the sage king, against Mo Jinyu, the outcome was still unknown. Jun Xiaoyaro actually wanted to refine the 9 orifices spirit rock? It was simply shocking. Jun Xiaoyaro was the epitome of the word crazy. When the young man heard that, his face flushed red, and his aura erupted uncontrollably. He said furiously, "Divine child of the Jun family, how dare you spout such nonsense?" The young man's aura erupted. He was also in the sage realm, with a heavenly and complete suppression. Hiss. Not to mention Mo Jinyu, even his follower is extremely powerful. His original form seems to be a sky-reaching rock spirit. After a prodigy sensed this aura, his teeth chattered. This young man was also a creature of the sacred island. His original form was a sky-reaching rock spirit. In addition, he stayed by Mo Jinyu's side every day. When Mo Jinyu absorbed the essence of heaven and earth, he could also get some of the essence. So his strength. He was not weaker than some giant prodigies. Presumptuous, how dare you scold the young master? Lu Renjia also shouted. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly, but his smile was a little cold. Sky-reaching rock spirit? Although it is not as good as the nine-hold rock spirit, but it is not bad to use it to refine my cauldron. When the sky-reaching rock spirit heard this, his heart instantly turned cold, and his expression changed. What, do you dare? Before he finished speaking, Jun Xiaoyaro directly raised his hand and took out the myriad qi cauldron. The three-legged, two-handled myriad qi cauldron was as thick as the sun and the moon. The myriad qi in the cauldron was tumbling, and every wisp could crush the void. In the entire treasure tower, all the prodigies did not expect Jun Xiaoyaro to make a move. After all, this was the trade fair of the business alliance of 10,000 clans. There should be rules. No one was allowed to make a move at will, let alone kill. However, Jun Xiaoyaro did not have any scruples. He directly used the myriad qi cauldron to suppress the sky-reaching rock spirit. After it sensed the pressure that was like that of a god, the sky-piercing rock spirit finally understood exactly what sort of terrifying figure it had offended. He had experienced Mo Jinyu's suppression before. The aura of a natural saint spirit was noble and supreme. And now, Jun Xiaoyao's aura was even more transcendent, like a supreme immortal king who controlled the life and death of all creatures. No. The sky-reaching rock spirit could not even resist. Even though he was a giant prodigy, he was not much bigger than an ant in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. Son of God of the Jun family, please stop. Hu Qingqing's charming face also changed. She knew that Jun Xiaoyaro was very powerful, but she did not know that he was this powerful. He attacked without saying anything and wanted to refine the person. After feeling Jun Xiaoyao's aura, Hu Qingqing did not dare to intervene at all. She turned to the Saint King of the Business Alliance of 10,000 clans and said, "Elder, please do something. This is the Business Alliance of 10,000 clans. Killing is not allowed, right?" The Saint King Elder also had a troubled look on his face. Just as he was about to say something, Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at him coldly. The Saint King was shocked, and cold sweat ran down his back. It was hard to imagine that he, a Saint King, was intimidated by a junior saint. He recalled Jun Xiaoyao's terrifying background. Even the Business Alliance of 10,000 clans could not afford to offend him. However, the Sacred Spirit Island was also a faction that they could not afford to offend. The Saint King of the Business Alliance of 10,000 clans was in a terrible situation. A small temple like theirs was no place for someone as great as Jun Xiaoyaro to exist. 8. A cry of agony came out of the myriad qi cauldron. It was the sky-reaching rock spirit screaming. It had no chance of escaping from the cauldron with its strength. A moment later, the cauldron fell silent. The geniuses felt their clothes were soaked in cold sweat. So this is how domineering the son of God of the Jun family is. Seeing is believing. Yeah, he killed the people of the Sacred Spirit Island without any hesitation. Nonsense, not many people in the Nine Heavens immortal realm are on par with the son of God of the Jun family. The Sacred Spirit Island might be strong, but it's not strong enough to make the son of God of the Jun family back off. Jun Xiaoyaro had once again proven how domineering he was with his actions. There were exceptions when it came to defying the heavens, but those who went against him had no chance of surviving. The atmosphere froze. Even the young master of the Thunderclap sect, Lei Zhen, the young master of the Heavenly Treasure sect, Qian Duozai, and the other geniuses were looking at Jun Xiaoyaro with great fear. Jun Xiaoyaro calmly looked at Hu Qingqing. Hu Qingqing's voluptuous figure shuddered. Her legs gave out and she almost fell to the ground. Jun Xiaoyaro calmly withdrew his gaze, a faint smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. I'm sorry, everyone, there's a little accident. Let's continue with the trade fair. Jun Xiaoyao's voice was calm and gentle, as if nothing had happened.